Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Friday Endurance Championship, round 7 of 8 here today, live from Hungaroring. The Pro and High Silver Championship continues. Hello, everybody, wherever you are. Hope you're well. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by the lovely Ryan Mawson and the excellent Stewie for this evening. We'll be bringing you the 2-hour race live here tonight. And well, first of all, Ryan Mawson, welcome to the broadcast. And well, number 2, it's Hungaroring.
Yeah, what a track for 2 hours of lasting around here. I know when you do an hour around here, sometimes it just feels like an eternity. Very fast track, very technical. You can't really take your eyes off the road. But I don't know about you, Jesse, but the numerous times we've come here with RCI, there has been some fantastic racing, side by side action. You wouldn't think that you can get, for example, 2 Bentley wide over the top of the hill and through that chicane, but well, we've seen it happen, and for some of these, the Pro and the High Silver, they always put on a great show here in the Friday Champ.
Yeah, it's true. I was going to bring that up. That was going to be my first talking point. Ryan, you beat me to the punch, and oh my God, are you right? Of course, Ryan Mawson and I usually anchor Saturday nights together, and we've been here more than a handful of times, and every single time, Mawson's not kidding. It has been incredible. In fact, 2 out of the last 3 races that I've done at Hungaroring have included a last lap or a penultimate lap pass for the win. And I don't know if that's going to happen today. There were 18 cars expected between Pro and High Silver. The race admin, Bart Macha, decided an hour ago that they would not merge the splits, but this time for a very novel reason, Mawson, I have to say. He told me he didn't. Usually we would merge the splits if there were less than 20 people. He said he didn't want to do that, and the reason, because there's a very tight battle in the lower split, and he did not want to have that affected by merging the splits. That's very noble to make that decision.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of the drivers in that High Silver split will be thankful of that. It's as well, especially at Hungaroring. You're battling people, and back markers can really start to play a factor. But it does mean for us, we've now really got to keep our eye on the low silver split, the battles that are going on there, and the pros. Once again, I'm just expecting some fantastic racing out of these guys already. This is just free practice, mind you. We're already having some pretty blistering times. That 199 of Goprov setting the early pace at 142.3. And that's even before we get to the go-go juice of qualifying time.
Yeah, I know qualifying here is technically important. There'll be people that argue both ways around this track. Every single week, we get into the conversation of how important is qualifying. Well, here it's fairly important. It's not a track that you want to have to make a lot of passes on. It's a rhythm race track, and qualifying fairly important. But we have also seen several cars that have come out of nowhere. I mean, there's no replacement for just having outright speed, and of course, you will have the inevitable pit stop at some point. And one thing, Mawson, about this championship with the driver changes, it's been very exciting because you have teams that try to do the overcut. There's teams that try to do the undercut. They do sneaky strategy where they underfill the car at the beginning of the race, simply trying to gain an advantage at the start, and then there'll be those that fill the car up and take a shorter pit stop. You just never can tell. Last week, of course, also a testament to that. We expected 2 cars that were on very different strategies to mix it up. Well, in fact, the leader of that race had their ace in the hole. And of course, with free practice ending, we will get to qualifying. And after qualifying, we will take a look at the championship standings. A couple of teams sort of running the championships so far, but it is not over yet with 2 rounds to go. Anybody's game still. Today could, though, go a long way to determining a champion.
Welcome to very much typical RCI championships. Even we're right at the end, there is still, battles up and down the way. It's never over until it's over. And the amount of times where we've had just differing winners every single time in these races, the track that plays to the cars and to the drivers. I have a feeling today, some of the cars that I'm going to be especially keeping my eye on, the Porsches and the Bentleys, the last few times we've seen them round here, they have been absolutely, they've just been on fire. The Porsche with its fantastic handling over the mountain, and you can see them sort of dart around the top of the hill through the very treacherous sort of top chicane that we've got up here, the S bend. It's one of those who dares is the victor at this. You can see these massive sausage curbs that want to just throw the car off. The Bentleys, for example, though, they can just go straight over that like it's absolutely not there.
Qualifying underway here. Everybody trying to get out on their opening lap. With only 17 cars on track, you'd think they would try to space out a little bit, but we talk about the racing driver mentality all the time, and I think it's coming into play here, Moss, in a little bit. Nope, I want to be out first, and I do not want to be behind you, even if, you could close your eyes, count to about 15, and then come out in clear air and think that you're the first car on the track. Nope, that's not what's important. You want to be the first on the racetrack in qualifying, mind you. There may be a psychology to that as well, now that I just thought about it, of you get out first, you might have one extra shot at a lap at the end, maybe? I don't know. I don't know where you stand on this, but I've always been a fan of get clean air and space by any circumstances necessary.
Oh yeah, especially if you're driving cars like this one, the Ferrari. It's probably one of the worst cars for the aero wash. You don't want to really be up right behind someone. Some cars may benefit from it. Some of the Porsches we've seen where if a straight is long enough at certain racetracks, they will want to tuck in behind someone to get just that little bit of a slipstream, a little bit more speed. But for the Ferrari, having driven this a few times, the closer you get to the car in front, the more uncontrollable this car becomes. It's one of the really, really heavy aero-based cars. You can see him fighting over the top of the hill there. But what a car if you can get this hooked up. We've seen some of the great drivers in RCI use this and have been really, really lethal with it. And there's those curbs that I mentioned. One touch of those, that grass on the outside, it looks like a long way. When you first turn in, you will discover that it's very much not a long way when your car wants to scuttle over there.
Well, during the race, you're going to see a lot of moves. You're going to see a lot of people try to wedge their car down on the inside of somebody. But here in qualifying, you will likely not see that. This corner here, important to get all the runoff room that you possibly can. You cut your corner short, you end up losing time. There's no general consensus on the fastest line through that hairpin. Some people like to be on the curb. Some people use the middle of the track. Some people use a diamond. I'm personally of the opinion it doesn't really matter. You want to be as close to the wall as you can there and run out as wide as you can to maximize the straightaway in the first lap by Felix Rupert by the Ren Welton team is a 1 minute 42.483 by the Porsche, and that was the mark to beat until GoProv in the 199 just set that time to 42.483. So a quarter of a second off is the 71 Ferrari. Felix Rupert and the Ren Welton team is trying to get some of that space back here. I was just looking at the timings there for a second. It's Max GoProv in the 199 leading the way, and another impressive opening stint for that car. We'll have to see just how they get on here through the rest of the session. Of course, 15-minute session. About 4 minutes of that gone at the start. And Robin Baugh, third place here. Very close. That's another thing we have usually here, close qualifying.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the amount of times that we've seen it, most of the field within a second, I don't doubt that tonight as well. It is a tricky track. Some of these cars take quite a long time as it would warm up. You've got to get the tire pressures correct. You've got to sort of get yourself in the groove. I find that Hungaroring has a specific rhythm to it as you're a driver, and you kind of, once you're in that, the circuit is really flowing and kind of easy as a way. But if you get put out of that, qualifying, catch up to someone comes out of the pits, can be quite difficult to get back to that. But yes, the early pace being set by the 199 on a 30-degree C track as well. We haven't really talked about the weather. Nice and clear. No chance of any sort of interesting amenities today, but that heat will, I think, will definitely play into it later on. People are going to have to start watching the tires through some of these corners.
And the gauntlet continues to be thrown down by the 199, a 42.312. As Felix Rupert might have improved, but it won't matter. Chris Melbourne for Volante Racing will take the second place spot, just about 1.5 tenths off the fastest time. That could be big for Volante to continue to contest this championship late into this season. What does Sim Smeets have? Ninth place for him, that 43 second lap in the 95. Not quite good enough. Grant Willamont leading high silver for the time being. How many times this season have we seen Grant Willamont in that 100 be up at the front of this field? And here again, another impressive qualifying. Porsche usually does really well here. For those of you that are uninitiated, Ferrari, as Ryan Mawson pointed out earlier, usually does really well here. And I think that's pretty much what you're going to see. It doesn't matter what category you're in. And of course, the odd on Bentley, some of the time with its all around capability, sneaks in there as well.
Yeah, Chris Melbourne in that 70 really showing what they can do. The Bentley's probably one of, if I would say, if not, but I would, I'm sure a couple of the pro drivers would like to prove me wrong. If not, one of the fastest cars around here. When you see these cars in some of the, the really fast leagues, RCI, sometimes even the esports divisions, these cars always get so much ballast on them just to try and slow them down to, anything near the rest of the field. But the Bentley does have that caveat, as it will. It is a fantastic car, but its driving style is quite different to a lot of the other GT3 cars. You have to get on with it, but if you can sort of get your head around how to a Bentley, then it is an absolute weapon. In the same way, like we're looking out the windscreen here of the 404, fighting it over the top of the hill, you'd say that's another strange car to drive. It's the Mercedes that has another driving style all of its own. And Martin Lawrence is going to
You were
abandon that
saying,
lap. I was saying that. Martin Lawrence going to have to abandon that lap, bottom of the hill under the braking. An incredibly hard car to get turned in, that Mercedes. It feels like you're driving an ocean liner sometimes.
I love how sometimes as commentators we'll say something and it happens. It's almost like we did do it, but it's just the knowledge that you have sometimes. I mentioned earlier, and of course, welcome in everyone joining us here on your Friday evening. And we do read chat here at RCI TV as always. And my first comment in chat was, I like Hungaroring. And I can't say that I did before I started covering esports events at this track. And that's when I noticed how explosive they can be and how good they are in any format. Doesn't matter if it's sprint, doesn't matter if it's an endurance race. They all seem to be really good. And Tom Bryant came in and said nobody likes Hungaroring, and has started a bit of a feud with Bart Mancha there. Pretty interesting, to say the least. Got some OSP love in chat here, and Tom Bryant not making any friends with a couple of people. Jaroslav Roth has joined us in chat. Hello, Roth. He was telling Martin Lawrence to go quicker there. It's very nice stuff by some of the other teams. Saw a good luck to Robin Baugh as well in there just a bit ago.
Yeah, 5 minutes left of qualifying. Going to be coming around now to some of the last few laps. The Ferrari of Felix Rupert as well, still ploughing around, still within in that top 3 spot. The all times now are just tumbling. We're now down to 142.321. I think had the conditions been maybe just a little bit cooler, we might have seen a 141 out of some of these drivers. I do not doubt it. Just obviously conditions you've got to work with. And number one as well, throwing it over the top of the hill. The big Bentley using any advantage you can get. they're always a weird car, the Bentley. You know, when you watch them race, it's one of those cars that just looks like it shouldn't be a GT3 car. It's this massive, great, hulking car. It towers over everyone else. Yet it's one of the lighter cars in the field, I believe, when the last time I looked at the technical specs for it.
Yeah, it is. It still is. The Bentley is huge and imposing, certainly, but beyond that, it is very hollow on the inside. It's none of the luxury in the racing car. I can guarantee you that. So, all of that luxury, all the wood grain, all the massaging, seat warming sort of affair, completely gone. One seat, in fact. So, it's actually quite light indeed, and the BOP seems to work for it, seems to favor it at some tracks here specifically as well. I would call this qualifying the usual suspects, both manufacturer and team. Grant Willamont continues to hold, what do you reckon that is? Just about a 10th lead over the next fastest high silver car, the 95 of Sim Smeets and Martin Lawrence here, who was being heckled by Tom Bryan a minute ago, is still trying to improve just a bit and get above at least the top two in high silver. Of course, Tobias Hopner is the third quickest in high silver right now, and in pro, it's GoProv, Melbourne, and Rupert, the 199, the 70, and the 71, respectively.
So far, it looks like as well a lot of people have. You're trying to now push the ever so slight anything that's left in that car for Martin Lawrence. That was a slower lap again. Could possibly be a wind up lap. He's got to get some pressure back in them and get some space on the road. But a lot of people now. There's a couple of green deltas on my screen, but not much for Grant Willamot though. He's up a tiny bit as well. And for this man, the number one, just about holding time at the minute. Coming up to the last couple of corners, we've got maybe a 10th. It might actually, you'd think, you say just a 10th. In this field, that 10th would put you possibly all the way up into maybe 6th, 7th, 6th. Let's see what it is. It was not an improvement this time around. In fact, no, it was slower by 20 thousandths of a second. A good consistency by the number one.
Yeah, you know it's close whenever you have to rethink, wait, how small of a gap is that? We expect to be talking about tenths, and we're talking about hundreds and thousands and 10,000s and hundreds of thousands. It's very close stuff indeed. Sven Check, a little off of the pace here, a second down in the 107, the GL Engineering sort of car, and certainly figured they'd be further up the grid, and that's a little better there. A 43.176 gets them into seventh. That's more like it out of Uri Svinček. Martin Lawrence continuing to try and improve. Have to see if they're capable of doing that. Grant Willamont has recently improved as well, as he nearly took about a 10th off of his time. No improvement up at the top in pro, except Robin Baugh has gone third, 2/10 off the pace, and that's more like it for the connection lost. Martin Lawrence, 404 AMG, seventh fastest, 42.915. And after struggling to run low 43s, Ryan Mawson, he goes even better and does a 42. He was never worried. He knew he could do it.
Yeah, well, sometimes they take them a while to come round, don't they? And as I said, Hungaroring has this weird sort of flow towards it. Once you've got it as a driver, that is it. If you can stay in that, you're all golden, really. There's just some places though where you have a tiny wobble, or you don't get the optimum line. And this track does really seem to punish that. It's a track where you corner speed is everything here. You've got to keep the speed up through the corners, and you've got to keep a nice flowing exit, because the amount of times where if you have a light wobble, you just drop so much. You won't think that the straights here, you look on the track map and you think there's not many straights really to contend with. Speed won't really matter, will it? It's all in the corners. Yeah, well, we've seen the amount of times where people have managed to overtake on the outside in those tiny little straights just from someone's minute mistake out of the corner. It is all go around this circuit. The Grant Willamot coming back up to the line. That is an improvement again, up to seventh. Just about 6 10 or just under 6 tenths off the provisional pole, and he gets another go around as the checkered flag now waves for qualifying.
This is probably the biggest surprise in qualifying for him. And of course, Shaven in the 141, the Balas Esports Ukraine team, championship leaders by just about 40 points. And if they had a really good day today, they could go ahead and clinch the championship. Mind you, it'd have to be a very exemplary day, but it hasn't gone their way in qualifying. You hope that they're able to do something here outside the top five and more than half a second off of the overall pace. The 199 in the pit lane is done with qualifying, but what does Ballas Esport Ukraine have? Only fifth fastest, but an improvement nonetheless, a 42.699. This is as far down the grid as we've seen them in about 4 or 5 weeks. So, what will that mean for their championship hopes, considering some of their rivals are up in front of them? Felix Rupert set the first lap of the session and spent a lot of that time in the top three. Could they get back onto the podium? No, they can't. A 42.564, an improvement on the time, but not on the leaderboard. They'll have to settle for fourth here, as all of the top six in the pit lane at this time. Svinchek and Willamont, some of the last threatening drivers here. Keller in the 271 has went second quickest in high silver on their last lap. So good job to them. And Svinchek does improve a 42.912, gets them in to eighth place. And that will conclude qualifying for the 2 hour Hungaroring race here on Friday evening. Now, that was pretty much what you expect out of a Hungaroring qualifying. Everyone leaving it late, set the quickest lap. Well, who will run away with the race today? First, we have to look at where we have come from. How about a little standings action for you here? Starting with the Pro Series Championship, Team Ballas Ukraine and the 141 have been on a roll. And even when they haven't been the dominant car, they've managed to park that Bentley on the podium spots. 320 points for them. Volante Racing has put up a valiant effort to keep their name in the conversation in their Bentley, and certainly they have done that in the number 70. They have 280 points, 40 points out of the championship lead. Behind them, it is a race among themselves. Front left tire scrubber esports in the 782 at 215 points. Dangling Wang Racing in the number 8 Porsche 192. Like and subscribe in that 911 AMR V8 Vantage at 184, 4 points behind them. Forza Italia PL Esports in the 501 at 180. And then there's the Porsche Spinala Racing team. And yes, I did look up how to pronounce that. 164 points in the 199, who are on the pole today, could do some damage and potentially put their name in the conversation for finishing on the podium in 1 week's time. Excel Racing by Ren Welton, 72 team at 161. I don't think they're here today, but Excel Racing by Ren Welton Orange, which is now just known as Ren Welton Esports in the 71, is here, and they have 158. Green Loafers Engineering in the 107, round out the top 10 at 157. The very 72, of course, is signed out of the championship. Just a confirmation there. And this is the second page here. Carbon Sim Sport, 4 points in front of Excel by Ridden Welton Green, who I believe is also no longer taking part. Then there's the 837 on 149 points that they have. Them and Silver Racing Team in the one could stand to move inside the top 10 today if all goes to plan. Connection Lost Racing, the 404s, had a rough season this season, and Martin Lawrence has been left all by himself at least one occasion, and they will look to break into the triple digits on points, but 9 behind them. ATK Academy in the 44, and the 74 Ren Welton White team with 64 points a bit further back. ACC SS Superstars and Desperate Measures triple five are level, and then there's the Jardier Community Team for English in the 84 with 45 points. Behind them is going to be the drivers of the cars that have retired from the championship. Well, that was the Pro Series standings, and we do not have the high silver standings for you. We'll try to bring those to you in just a moment. Those were just the pro standings. Of course, two classes here today. And here are the high silver standings. Balasso Squadra Corsa have been absolutely killing it in their AMR V8 Vantage, 363 points. And High Speed Ninjas in the 95, their nearest competitors with 322. Turn 1 Pro Am in their Porsche with 301. A lot to play for in that group. Turn 1 Pro Am risking being eliminated from championship competition today, however. AOSP is fourth place in the 722 at 224 points, just about 22 ahead of Turn 1 Honda Pro Am in the 102. TSE Board Dads in the 166 at 178. Team Volmont by Prime Motorsport in the 271 at 161 points, who had that excellent qualifying lap at the end of qualifying just now. Turn 1 Silver in the 101 with 160, just 1 point behind them goes Toblerone on the 197 on 146, and Volante Racing Academy 3, and they have 85. Page 2 is going to show a bit of frustration all of these teams have either not shown up for a majority of the races or have since retired. One of those weird situations, Ryan Mawson, where we have less silver drivers than we have pro. Usually it's the other way around. I've talked about that all season, about how strange it is that we have less silver than pro, but still a great show in both categories. My question to you, Ryan, is if you are the Ballas UK or the Ballas Ukraine team in the 141, and you maybe haven't had a great qualifying, you barely qualified in the top 5. What's your strategy today? Are you going for it? Are you more defensive because you have a 40-point lead? What would be your strategy?
It's a hard one to call, isn't it? With the Ballers Esport there back there in fourth place, I think, and the Bentley is a great endurance car, though. That's the one thing that we can't count out. The Bentley, they can run it light. Unlike if the Porsche teams want to run light, they have the flip side of their car starts becoming a lot more sketchy on the handling. The Porsche likes a bit of weight in the front, and at Hungaroring, it's more beneficial to have a little bit of extra weight in the Porsche. At least the few drivers I've talked to, just for over the hill and coming, when you're coming down the hill, it makes that car a little bit more planted. I wouldn't count out if Ballers Esports will sort of underfuel their car and take an early stop and try and leapfrog all the Porsches, because I don't think the Bentley can outdo the Porsche in the cornering. It doesn't have the brakes and it doesn't have the handling, but what it does have is a great endurance. And if you can get it in some clear air, I think that the lap times of that car are going to be its savior.
I love it. I love endurance racing. Of course, if you are new to the championship, very simple stuff. Each team has two drivers. There's a 67-minute stint limit. And to satisfy the mandatory pit stop today, you don't have to take tires, you don't have to take fuel, though you will at some point have to do that to make it to the end of the race. The only requirement that's mandatory in pit lane is that you put a different driver on board at some point in the race. All the teams that are competing for the win today will undoubtedly only come down pit lane the one time. I said that once before, and George Boothby nearly made me a liar. But usually speaking, you only need to come down pit road once, and anybody else that comes down more than that will likely have some sort of penalty. This series live stewarded. We welcome in the stewards and thank them for their help as well. Just reading chat briefly here. Clark was talking about racing with drivers from the 70, the 8, the 782, and the 197 teams in other leagues, and saying they're all great guys. That's awesome, and I'm glad to hear about that. They seem like excellent folks, and glad to have them all here as well. You know what they say, sim racing's huge, but it is a very small world. Tommy says, Volante fan club here, all one of them. Fantastic stuff. Hey, look at it this way. Everybody started out with just one fan. Somebody has to be the first. Also, I think that's a bit tongue-in-cheek. I think Volante probably has a bunch of fans, considering how good that they have been doing. Some other things to mention here. Of course, there is a championship afoot, and it is very important to get the best start that you possibly can here. We don't usually see a ton of accidents here on the track, but you just never can tell. A lot of Dangling Wang fans and front left tire scrubber fans in the chat as well. We see you. Mark's also commenting how good Stewie is on the camera. Stewie is our cameraman. He pioneered the extracurricular camera technique, and what a brilliant man he is. And, an excellent specimen of a broadcaster, I would say.
You gotta have a steady hand to fly some of these drones around, especially the how expensive I'm sure some of these cars are. You won't want to go denting it with your lovely drone, but we always get the good shots around here. You know, you can never miss some of the racing. The one thing that even if we miss some parts, the one thing that no one misses is the stewards, who I'm sure will be having eagle eyes on tonight. As he says, we often don't have many super crazy starts on Hungaroring, but this is the Friday Championship, Pro and High Silver. If there's an opportunity there, you know that any of these drivers are going to take it. And what is going to be interesting for me is what is the 199 going to do versus the 70. I think that it's going to be a drag race to turn one, and who dares wins on the brakes.
Yeah, it usually is a land rush here. This straightaway here for the start-finish straight is very wide, and it is not uncommon to see them go 3 and 4 wide. They went 5 wide through here one time. I lost my voice that day, and a couple of other drivers lost their ability to race in that championship based on that very desperate lunge move into the corner. But that was ever so long ago. The green flag is out, the lights are on, and we are racing down into turn 1 as we have the cars trying to make their way into the turn successfully. Not a lot of 3 wide, if any, there. 3 wide back in the field, but 2 wide everywhere else. And up front, it is line astern as everybody tries to get into a single file affair. Uri Svinček finds himself in it. He's trying to get a move here, going around the outside of the Porsche of the Bentley. Chris Melbourne absolutely going for it here, trying to get by the 199. Can't quite do it. Finds himself under fire from Felix Rupert in the 71 as they all go single file again. But for how long?
That Bentley really wants that lead. That's what I was saying. I don't think if the Bentley gets stuck behind the Porsche, then they are going to be in a bit of trouble. Chris Melbourne trying everything. But in the early stages of this race, you've got to be so careful. Look at the line of cars. Everyone is nose to tail. And if you go for a move, and there's someone off in the background. Which car was that?
That's the 107. The 107 was off Uri Svinček, and I think the 782 or the 141 was off a minute ago as well, Ryan.
A bit of a bump and grind. We've got a race replay. There goes one of the Bentleys off into the escape road. And that is that's the Bentley of Harbour, actually. Yeah, I think.
Tobias Hopner there going off the track, and the incident I was talking about was actually in turn 5. Also, that happened too. So we've had Bentleys off twice in the first lap, and he's not done yet. Chris Melbourne in the 70 shoving it up the inside of the corner, and he's going to get the lead away right here. An unbelievable move. Caught him napping in the 199, and through is Chris Melbourne. The championship contenders trying to get it done, and nearly getting run off the track was Felix Rupert, diving down to the inside. Madre in the 199 trying to go as defensive as possible, but forgot there was grass there, or maybe thought that Rupert wouldn't even try to use the grass, but he was, and he did, but it didn't work.
Yeah, the 71 Felix Rupert saw that sort of postage-sized speck of tarmac and went, yeah, I could go up that. Realizes that yep, the road does run out there. And this is from earlier. That is Svenček rejoining. And there's all a bit of an accordion moment. The white Bentley taking avoiding action, I think, decided that they couldn't make the corner, so they weren't going to try.
I still don't know what Bentley that was. We actually saw the Bentley I was talking
Oh,
about go off there, and I'm not sure if that was the 782 or the 141. It's definitely one of those. Contact here! Contact between Madre and Rupert, and I think Rupert sent him back the right way. He's going to get the point or the place back, but the stewards will not like that very much. That might be a 5-second penalty.
possibly. Just looking like the door was briefly opened there, but it was one of those, was the door always going to close? That is the question. And the 71 nearly losing the position to Robin Barr in the 8 of the many fans adoring Dangling Racing. I can't even speak today. I'm going to have to get my drink of water.
Yes, indeed. We love to see the fans come out. We love to see them cheer on their teams, drivers, friends. Doesn't matter. We love to see it. And again, fantastic evening for motorsport. As Lawson said earlier, very warm out here at Hungaroring today. Look at this fight continuing. Fight for just about 5th place. A fight for 2nd. Brennan Madre trying to get it done. And look, all the way from the behind. Robin Baugh trying to go from 4th to 2nd here is going to find themselves on the wrong line. But let's look at that again. Was 3 wide there. Felix Rupert was. The door was open for Robin Baugh, and Madre did not have any defense other than to go to the inside, back to the outside. But all is well as after a near spin and complete chaos, Chris Melbourne, who has taken the lead, has disappeared to some 3.5 seconds, no doubt aided by how fierce the fighting is between Madre, Baugh, and Rupert.
Yeah, Robin Barr, you can read the traffic, read the situation ahead, picked his line, and that was just the best move you could have been. Almost got 2 cars in one. It just wasn't to be. Didn't have quite the drive out of the corner. But yeah, the
Oh, no!
RCI 37.
I was wondering what was happening there. I was like, why are we looking at the 837? I didn't notice anything, but yes, they were all the way at the back, and something has happened to Radajak. They just pulled off, didn't they?
Number 1 pulling off the road. Possibly that they have returned, had that car towed back to the pits. Possible mechanical damage from the hit, I'm going to assume.
I see. I mean, you're very right. They might have determined that it was too damaged to even try to get that car back safely, and they towed. We have general guidelines in RCI. You're supposed to drive back unless the car's too damaged to do so. Oh, 3 wide there. 3 into 1 doesn't go. And a huge kerfuffle in the 107 getting through that, but only just as, what did I say before the drop of the green flag? 3 wide here, coming down into the corner often leads to issues. So disagreement over space there, and it all went just a bit wrong.
Remember, Jesse, though, racing drivers have selective hearing, so they only hear when we say something. And look at this, 2 wide. The Bentley trying to go around the outside. It's a brave move from the 782. Not to be, but you have to applaud that man for trying. He wanted it, did Mulholland.
Oh, Felix Rupert there, all sorts of sideways. Ooh. Off the corner, flashing lights on the green car, trying to let him know that I'm there. Please stop turning in on me. And I'm not sure how much control Felix Rupert had, but nonetheless, maintains that position. And by the way, something's happened to Robin Baugh. Robin Baugh back to 6th place. Felix Rupert back up to 3rd and back to square one. We were here on lap 1. It is not lap 1 anymore, but we're still having the same fight. Madre, the rear wing of his Porsche, looking back at Felix Rupert, and Korshaven, who is back to 6th, finds himself up to 4th and has just taken 3rd. That's what a champion does. Opportunistic move up to 3rd place. Korshaven and the 141, they want this championship.
Yeah, well, probably that might have even been part of their strategy, is to take it easy, let these guys sort of, spin their wheels and heat themselves up and battling. Looking to the inside is the 141. There is a Bentley space there, just a bit of door mirror. Oh. But now look, the 71's got the drive. But not quite. Oh, I say that actually. He is looking. He's trying to do what Chris Melbourne did on lap 1, but the 71 just could not get around that the 141, the monstrous Bentley.
Now I'm curious if the 141 can drive away here, or because Felix Rupert's looked just about the raciest to a fault here. So I wonder if maybe the 71 of Rupert still has the pace, certainly keeping up with the 141 now. 8 seconds the gap, Chris Melbourne out in front. The 70, of course, chasing the 141 in the championship, 40 points down. If they could hold on to this, they could go into race 8 next week with a shot to win. Grant Willamont, who qualified on pole for high silver, what's happened to the number 100?
Coming into the chicane, 2 into 1, don't go! That car gets turned around into the barrier.
Where have they cycled out? Well, they are not even on the podium anymore. They are 5th place in high silver, which means Keller in the 271 leads high silver. Scheckerman in the 95 is a couple of spots behind him, just about 2 seconds behind the lead in high silver. So Grant Willamont has brought the 100 Porsche to pit lane, and that will do them absolutely no good because they will have to pit at least one more time in this race.
Yeah, it's kind of all coming undone for a couple of teams, and this pack still haven't really sorted themselves out. The 141 now trying desperately to sort of scuttle away. They don't want any of this. They're chasing the championship. They've got their eyes on the prize of bigger and badder things. But Chris Melbourne in the 70, even though all this battling has been going on, the early race pace in that 70 Bentley is phenomenal.
Yeah, it sure is. You saw it right on the off that they were absolutely going to try and take the lead. They had one opportunity to get it done, and they did it to great effect. And now it is 2 Bentleys up front here. Felix Rupert in the picture here as we ride on board with Dominic Koroshavin for the Ballas Esports Ukraine team, the championship leading team, as both the 141 and the 71 Ferrari gap the Porsches behind Madre and Ba, and I believe that's Mulholland in the 782 in the background. In fact, it is, as Mulholland has kept in touch with that group. We've just had a car retire as well. In fact, we've had 2 cars retire to this point. Grant Willamont, not one of those. They're in pit lane, certainly you would assume for repairs.
Yeah, that car did take a heavy old hit onto the left side, so we'll see what happens to that Porsche. The 199 still under fire. This car, it looks so confident in qualifying. I'm wondering if the 199, maybe their setup does not like a full race fuel. Seems to be a little bit ailing, or as I've just been pointed out in my ear, that is their second driver. Maybe it's part of their strategy, is that you send the slower driver out when the traffic is all bunched up. So it doesn't really matter if you lose a little bit of time and you send the fast guy out when everyone's spread out. You can gain it all back then during the pit stop strat.
Absolutely crazy stuff. Watching the reactions from the chat's entertaining in and of itself. A couple of other things. Potentially one of the retirements was due to a cable problem in their sim racing hardware, and 117 Sim Racing reacting to the rejoin we saw in turn 1 earlier, and I can only say I agree with you. That was a bit poor. I think I'd say, oh, and I just saw the replay of that McLaren hitting the wall. So that was, I had to go and see the, it was the 271 of Keller hit the wall a minute ago, and that will give the high silver lead to the 95 Porsche of Scheckerman, which, don't mind if I do, they were third, now they're first, and the 2 faster cars both having trouble and certainly significant damage to the 271 now. The 95's looking like they could be top dog in high silver today. It's been like this all season, Mawson, by the way, in high silver. You think one team is going to be dominant, and then they're just not. At Bathurst a few weeks ago, Stewie and I enjoyed a last lap pass. Not only a last lap pass, we'll call it a desperate pass coming to get the checkered flag. It was incredible stuff.
Yeah, and silver teams. I mean, half of the going to be half of the battle of Hungaroring is keeping it on the road, and I think that's in RCI that is how we judge you in the classes. It's not necessarily pace. We've seen some silver drivers do great things. It's consistency, but because of that, we often see that the silver championship. There's so many mix-ups over the season that it just becomes, down to the wire, down to just one or two positions that give you it. And speaking of one or two positions, I'm sure that the number 8 would much appreciate having a couple more positions. They've been hounding the 199 lap after lap now, but when you are in both the same car, it does make it a little bit harder. You have no kind of advantage over, your fellow driver in front. You have a tiny bit of slipstream, but unless you're really, really brakes, you're both good on the brakes. Comes down to sort of who's got the bigger cojones.
It's crazy. You can see Robin Baugh's car, how damaged it is. That's from the early scuffles. Remember, that car was going 3 wide. That car was in the grass earlier and had contact. You can see it there, the damage on the car. It's not major. It's only going to be a few seconds. It will scuff the car up. It can affect the aerodynamics of the Porsche, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm not a Porsche driver myself, so I can't tell you how much it would affect them. But nonetheless, a scuffed up car, a battle scarred car in 15 minutes here of a 2-hour race. Not exactly what you would want to have happen, but certainly seems to have the pace over the 199 of Madre as he thinks about going down into one, but can't quite get their nose in there before time is due. Felix Rupert, by the way, Mawson, is keeping up with Shaven right now. So that's good for the 71. It's also good for the 70 because the points gap, if Rupert was to get by Shaven, that would mean that Melbourne would outscore, or excuse me, the 70 would outscore the 141 by about 15, 16 points. That would nearly cut the gap in half going into the final round.
Yeah, I'm sure that the 70 will have their eyes firmly glued on the timing screen and thinking, "Come on, 71." But now that Rupert and Korshaven are sort of broken away from the pack, I think that the 71 might actually be playing the long game. We saw that Ferrari did quite have the early pace. They were not hanging around once they'd got through some of the traffic. But maybe it's a bit of a strategy to just sit by the 141. They're about 3 tenths backers now, and we'll keep an eye on them, see what they do. Ooh, goes the 8. That door was well and
I hate
truly
this
closed.
gantry. I hate that gantry. I've hated that gantry. It's there in real life, so it's there in the sim. But I hate that camera. I hate that gantry. Every broadcaster I've ever worked with hates that gantry because that's a hot corner. That's a corner that you can make an overtake on. But unfortunately, we've never seen one there because of that gantry.
All the cameras at Hungaroring seem to be placed really high up as well, have you noticed? That they all like to be on stilts.
Oh dear. Maybe the elevation change. I don't have a good answer for that. But Robin Baugh has an answer for the 199. But actually, maybe he doesn't because with all the protesting he's done, he hasn't been able to make it stick yet.
Not as of yet, but he's got to pick his move wisely because the 782, if you look behind of Mulholland, he's not exactly slouching around either. Every time that the 8 has gone for a move and it's possibly lost out, the 782 has had their nose there. They're ready and waiting, but they just need that one opportunity to get by.
Well, I mean, Chris Melbourne knows one shot, one opportunity, mom spaghetti, all that stuff, and he looked. We have a saying. I don't know if this is an American thing or just an idiom in of itself, but we say don't look a gift horse in the mouth, and 70 definitely didn't, as they have skedaddled up the road. And for anyone wondering what the dominant Bentley was, if the 141 was going to run them down, well, it hasn't worked out that way. Melbourne continues to gap the field over 10 plus seconds now. Incredible pace out of the 70.
Yeah, the one thing that they will have to keep an eye on that though is just obviously we've still got an hour 42 left to run. You got to be careful on the cars sometimes. You don't want to be too hard on the tires and use up all of your rubber, immediately. For the 70, I don't really think that's a problem. But for some of these guys who have had the early pack battles, where they've been really scrubbing the tires and trying to run away from each other. Kind of wondering how many teams have got a little bit of light graining, and we might see that come into play as the tire wear gets worse and worse.
That is a very good point, by the way. Robin Botch is still trying to go down the inside, and it probably will be to no avail because even though they're side by side now, it is a massive left hand turn here, and we've seen that come off, but usually it's whenever the manufacturers are different. So, unfortunately, it didn't work on that occasion. Falls back into line, but is ever so close. I never liked being that close to somebody, Ryan. I never liked it because if they went off the track, that means you're going off the track, and if they make a mistake, you're either going to make the same mistake or you're going to be into them, and it's going to cause you just as much strife as it caused them.
Yeah, I've been that close a couple of times to people. If between racing drivers, you know who you can trust. I will put my car that close to someone, but yeah, in the endurance race, I've always got that, that thought in the back of my head of don't prang the car, and you do have someone else waiting for you with this car. And speaking of pranging the car, what's happened to the 271 backwards off at turn? That's 3, is it?
Well, Nicholas Keller has already been off the track once today, and not because they wanted to be, mind you, but they lost the lead in high silver and now have continued to fall. You wonder if the damage on that car has played some factor in that. We heard that they also hit the curb. If you thought hitting the curbs around here was a bad idea in general, it is. It's even worse after you've, what did you say, Ryan? Pranged up the cars. So definitely only adding insult to injury. We have lost the 100, by the way. They have officially retired that car after a hard hit into the wall. So Scheckerman does lead. Alwa now in second in high silver in the 722. And that's good news for the 95 Porsche as they are in their own championship battle, just about 40 points out of the championship lead. And like I said, if they win and Rossi and the 185 team finish third or even fourth, they've halved or nearly halved the points deficit going into the final round, and they make it a very real possibility of winning that championship. Same situations going on in pro with the 70, the 141. So it could be a day that could go a long way, like I said, in determining the championship, but we got a long old way to the barn today. And my goodness, Madre has a long old way to his pit stop. He's going to have a nightmare tonight about lime green Porsches.
I was going to say, I'm sure that the 199 is watching that timer. When you've got someone in your mirror like this, you can see the number 8. That now you're just trying to juke them out. He's putting the car left and right, sort of the fake positioning, as it were, to try and get anything on the 199. But yeah, you keep when you're the driver of that car, you keep looking up and thinking, how long have I done? Approximately 3 minutes, and you just have to sort of groan behind your teeth and continue holding the wheel. But I mean, look at this train. I also wouldn't actually count out the 501. If we look, they're slowly creeping up onto this train as well in their Audi and double juke. 8 moves over as well as the 782.
He went wide there, did Madre. This could be the opportunity, and I think it just might be. But if Madre can hold on just a little bit to the inside, he might have something for him. He's going to give him the room as Robin Baugh, as they all go a little bit wide, but Baugh goes even wider. They're going to be side by side here. This could be an absolute feast for Darren Mulholland behind. If they come together, they nearly do. 2 wide, thinking about 3 wide, blocked by Robin Baugh, goes back into Madre's line. They're going to be side by side here, trying to get as much as you can and get as close as you dare. Sykes himself out, does Robin Baugh. It all resets to naught. Here comes Mulholland on the outside. He's going to have to give that up, and they all go back single file, and Robin Baugh, after being ahead, after being side by side, after being brave, late on the brakes and on the outside, it didn't come to anything but a little bit of a slip right there by Madre. To the inside is Robin Baugh, but I don't think it's going to work this time either. But if he can hold on here, he might just have it, and he has done. He has held on as he goes to the inside, but has to round off the corner, and it slows him down, and that absolutely screwed Mulholland. Jarzabowski now trying to get into the mix. Jarzabowski, Svinchek, Lawrence, they're all involved now.
I've never seen three wide coming down into that corner, into Gantry corner, as I'm now going to call it. But my God, now everyone has bunched up. Now everyone wants a piece in their pack. We've got the 501, the 107, and the 404, who had,
Oh,
we, we
dearie
ex-
me.
we expected them to maybe be a bit higher up. This could be their chance. It's bunched everyone up for them in that almighty Mercedes, the car with the straight line advantage.
I'm sure somebody, when the both of us came on air and we mutually agreed that this race is generally exciting, they probably scoffed at that. No, for whatever reason, it always is in RCI. It's very interesting throughout. You always get this sort of racing where around this track in particular, where you'll have groups of cars that just fight the whole race. And despite the fact that very clearly Bob Holland and maybe some of the others have a little bit more pace, Madre is able to have have enough pace, B, have enough wherewithal to put that car where even if you give up on corner exit, you still have position on the next corner. It has to do with this racetrack. It's a rhythm racetrack. Most of the corners do go left, right, left, right. So if you can hang on long enough, you can get back clear, even though you don't necessarily have the grip or the pace of another car. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. All credit to Madre holding the ground, running an excellent race to this point, and keeping the traffic behind him. It's an excellent job.
And I think that's why the 70, we saw that the Bentley of Chris Melbourne was immediately on the attack. I think they knew that. They knew that if they got stuck behind the 199 of the Porsche, sometimes it is just impossible to get by. As we're seeing now, the 8 is trying absolutely everything they can, and the 782. But even when the opportunity is given, it's so hard to make it stick. If it's not a huge mistake, as he says, you can often gain it back. There's so many lines around this track that you wouldn't think it, that still end will still put you up inside in front of exactly where you were. Will the 8 go for it again? Coming down into turn 1, the 199 thinks about defending it. It's sort of giving him the squeeze, and once again, not to be. 782 looks to try and get a better run out of the corner, sort of taking the wider line and trying to drive down, but it's not to be this time. Still everyone fighting behind as well.
Here's what I love about these teams, folks. This is what I love about racing in general, and especially when it happens in sim racing. You've got 3 or 4 teams here that are all relative to each other, that are all fighting for a position that's not even a podium, but they're fighting like their life depends on it. They're nowhere near the end of this race. They have a pit stop coming up, but they're fighting. They're fighting hard for it, but they're also doing that, exactly what Robin just did. They're giving each other space. They're not trying to race each other dirty. They're not trying to crowd each other. They're not trying to punt to pass, chrome horn. They're not trying to do any of that. They're literally out here trying to race each other. And it can be frustrating if you are Ba and you are being as respectful as humanly possible and you can't get by, but it's also really fun. This is races like this that make me wish I was out there. Clearly, I wouldn't be on the pace of some of these teams, but the point is like these are the days that you love racing when you can mix it up with your competition like this. It's been, what is it, nearly 25 minutes they've been at this.
Around about, it was pretty much the green flag dropped, and this happened. Look at that, with bumper to bumper, there's no room for error for the 8 or the 782. He's a couple of inches off the 199. The 782's there, and actually, looking back, that's the 501 poking their nose back in as well. Just, you cannot make any kind of crazy move because you will concede position. Every single time you think, I'm going to go for this overtake, you have to be wary of it. And looking at the background, actually, the 501's having to go super defensive against Svenchek.
Couple of moves there. Josh Zabowski might lose out just a little bit here, and I think they have done. Actually, no, they've maintained, actually. In fact, they haven't lost anything there as Svenchek and Lawrence still behind them. You've got the group in front, that's Madre, Ba, and Mahaland. And like you said, you've got Jarzabowski, Svenchek, and Lawrence, who are right behind them. But every time the 199 and the 8 in front get side by side, it brings this group, who are also fighting each other, back into the other group, and it becomes a 6-way battle. I just don't understand why people can't be interested in motorsport. Is this not entertaining enough for you? I don't get the point of soap operas when this exists. This is brilliant.
And what I always love is watching these kind of races. even if the cars are the same, you can tell, a driver's style, the way that the car's positioned, everything. The 8 and the 199, same car, completely different driving style. And then you've got a Bentley, a Ferrari, second Bentley, a Mercedes, all different cars, all trying. Number 8 this time is trying to go around the outside, possibly going for the cutback maneuver. But once again, it's very hard to do. And every time he does that, the 782 is just having an open invitation.
If Madre gets this 199 to the pit lane with this position intact, which is going to be a really tall order, mind you, but if he does, that's got to be mission accomplished right there because it's such a hard thing to do. And he's not hard blocking. He's just sort of listing over to the inside of the corner. He's letting Ba bind himself up if he wants on the apex. Ba knows that I don't want to be there because if I'm there, that probably Mulholland in the 782 is going to go around me. And it's all about deterrence and deterrence being executed here. Jarzabowski goes really wide here. He might lose this spot after all to Uri Svinček. Martin Lawrence looking eagerly by here as Lawrence is going to take him 3 wide. I don't know. Svinček knows they're 3 wide. He does eventually. And again, a pass made, contact there, maybe just a little bit between the Ferrari and the AMG as they sort it out. Martin Lawrence can't get through, but look at that, a pass made, Svinček through.
That was, I'm sure, an incredibly scary moment. I thought briefly that the 501 might just about hold on to it, but no, it was not to be. Massive Bentley sweeping across the nose and off. And well, for the 70, our leaders, I think this is actually the first car that they're coming up to lap, which just shows the monumental pace that they've had. This is 30 minutes into the race. And speaking of 30 minutes into the race, we've got a first drive-through.
We sure do. We didn't even talk about track limits. It's not the biggest deal here. There are a couple places that you can get track limits for running wide and coming back onto the track at speed. But that drive-through penalty is not from track limits. Brian Mawson, as per usual, mate, if anything interesting happens, please do interrupt me. Gonna do some penalty reports in the meantime. No further action for minor contact between the 722 and the 837. Racing incident for minor contact between the 199 and the 70. Racing incident for minor contact between the 70 and the 77. Warning for car 71 for avoidable contact with the 199. I was wondering what they would do. Remember earlier I said there might be a 5-second penalty for that. Well, they determined that since nothing of value was lost, just a warning would do in that case. Racing incident minor contact between the 199 and the 71. Drive-through penalty for car 271 for taking out the one deemed an excessive dive bomb that also forced the 404 to take evasive action as well. So a drive-through for car 271.
And that was the incident that we saw earlier with the 404 sort of taking evasive action and that Bentley rejoining. So that was that.
Warning for car 1 for moving under braking and making an incident worse. No further action for a dive bomb between the 107 and the 501. And a very rare disqualification for car 1 on unsafe rejoin on multiple occasions. The number 1 car flooring the throttle into oncoming traffic, causing a major collision and contact with the 837, the 722, and the 100. Additional steward's remarks, and this is rare, folks. This driving is totally unacceptable. The number 1 has been disqualified from both the race and the entire championship for extremely dangerous driving. I've never seen a steward's note like that.
No, you know that you're going to have to really go sit on the naughty step. In fact, the naughty step is in a different continent. It's where the number 1 has been sent. And speaking of penalties, both cars coming in with their drive-throughs, the 271 and the 8. Robin Barr, that cycled him out way out of this pack and the order that he was in. And that kind of makes the battle with the 199 now more interesting. It's now not Porsche versus Porsche. These now got the very, very angry 782 of Darren Mulholland riding him, that massive Bentley. Now we'll see what they can do.
So, just to recap, the 271 got a drive-through penalty for an incident. The 8 drive-through penalty was indeed for track limits. That's not a RCI steward penalty for the 8. That was a ACC track limits penalty, and we didn't really consider it, but as aggressive as the 8 was trying to be to get around the 199, it it does sort of make sense. And they got that really quick. They got that within 30 minutes. That's incredible stuff. And fortunately for them, though, it resets. So they get 3 more warnings before they get a penalty on the 4th limit violation again. So silver lining, I suppose, for the 8 for Rob and Bob. But unfortunate for us, that does take them out of that battle. Not that that battle's gone anywhere. It's just the line has moved up. Darren Mulholland now certainly will have been studying what had been going on between the 8 and the 199 and trying to make the move. Well, that's one way to do it. That's not the cleanest way to do it, though, mind, as the 782 lays into him just a little bit, suggests they might get off the racing line.
Yes, I think they they used the I was gonna say, you can use the Bentley speed or other things. What they used is the sheer size of it. They decided that you are a small little Porsche and you can move. I think once again the stewards might be having their eagle eyes on that one.
Ooh. Well, this race has been very interesting for a lot of reasons. Felix Rupert, by the way, has fallen off the back of course shaven just a little bit. It's been fluctuating anywhere between a second to a second and a half, depending on what sector they're in. But everybody falling further and further behind Chris Melbourne in the 70 that has just been so dominant. Didn't qualify on pole, didn't need to. Took the car to the front at the sort of the beginning of lap 1 and has not looked back. 13 plus seconds to the good for the 70 in a weekend in a race, Ryan, that they had to have it. They had to have a better result than the 141, and who knows, maybe today is that day. If they can do anything to lessen that points margin, it gives them a better shot to run for the championship a week from tonight. And it's the same thing with the 95. The 95 putting themselves in a better place to contend for the High Silver Championship in 1 week's time. And we know you haven't really seen this car today, but this is the Volante Racing SimSport 70 Bentley. That is Chris Melbourne's hands. And this is what it looks like to be in the lead in a race like this. I always imagined opera music playing in a car like this. It's heavy metal in the pack, with all the racing. And then as the leader, it's sort of opera music, nice, calm, quiet sort of affair. And certainly his team at Volante will be updating him, letting him know, Chris, you hit the jackpot because there's just mayhem behind you.
And even without the mayhem, the 141 and the 71 have broken away from the pack, and even the 141 has now managed to gap Felix Rupert in that 71. The 70 is still got the race pace over the 141. The last lap actually about 4/10 faster than their car behind. So that 70 is just flying even on race fuel. And you can see their best there, a 143.2. Car behind them's best in that 141 is a 143.7.
Yeah, that's all the analysis you're going to need on the 70 today, because that says it all, and music to their ears, mind you. I love the reactions coming in from chat on that previous sin that Mulholland did. Lick the stamp, special delivery. Love it, guys.
Yeah, that one was actually delivered though, so it can't be like a Hermes send.
It wasn't return to sender.
It wasn't. We did get a "we missed you" card. They did hit that Porsche. And speaking of, the poor Porsche is now being bullied by the 404.
Oh, come on.
This poor little blue Porsche. What? Come on, lad. What did this blue Porsche ever do to you? I mean, okay, they qualified, on pole, but we'll gloss over that. What have they gone, and what is going on here?
Oh, he got held up there, and
Oh,
around the outside was Lawrence trying to get or excuse me, the AMG trying to get the job done, and couldn't quite do it. A little bit of a argy-bargy there. Martin Lawrence won't appreciate that quite so much. Thought they had the pass done, as Svinček up in front might have slowed the 199 down when they dive bombed there, and caused that to stack up momentarily. But Holland up to fourth place now, as the 107, excuse me, up to fifth place as Finchek gets through. We're going to take a look at that one more time. Ooh, squeezed him as much as you like to the inside and just held him up on the exit. Nearly had him, did the 404.
yeah, looked for the move, but once again, like we've said, you can get up the inside on one corner. That's the easy part. It's being able to hold it for the next few corners, as we see pretty much the same move. And the gantry, the curse of the gantry blocks us, but I have a feeling that was a move that was clipped the corner and nowhere to go.
Well, he had to make a decision because the car in front of him was braking, and he had to make a decision. Do I go to the inside or the outside? He was further along to the inside. He thought that'd be the safer bet, except that, well, if you're trying to brake into a corner, it's the shorter way around and you have less time. So just ended up climbing the curb, ran out of space, and made contact there. And I mean, it's one of those things. Like we can judge it as harsh as we want, but when you're the butt in the seat, you have that split second to decide, what do I do here for self-preservation. And a lot of times, strangely, as a racing driver, you take the inside, and it's not the smart thing to do, but you do it. I guess you're hoping that you're able to miss more that way, and not the case here. The All things considered, no real harm or foul there. Scheckerman, by the way, will not be wanting to give up that top spot. Still, the 95 would be gaining points on the 185, but not nearly as much. So defending perhaps with their life would be Scheckerman in the 95, as this pack continues to race each other for what is just about fifth place. Here is Brian Scheckerman for the high-speed Ninjas, continuing to keep Hawa behind him, but only just.
Only just so far. Like I said, the 722 managing to hassle that Aston Martin around. There's another car as well that I've seen some drivers really be able to extract that. The problem with the Aston I always found, at least for me as a driver, I just could never get on with the turbo lag. You watch some of these cars come out of the corners, and look, the 95, they're gone. Coming out of the corners, the big, massive turbos of the Aston take what feels like forever to actually spool up. But, if you've got the talent through the corners, the Aston Martin is still an absolute weapon.
Stewie, can you focus on Hawa for a second? I'm curious about something I've never noticed until just now, and I want to know if I'm crazy or not. Yeah, okay. Ryan Mawson, we're gonna play a game. Do play at home yourselves. Some of you will know Hawa for AOSP. What country do you think he's from?
Oh, it's the oh, you're gonna stretch my memory, Jesse. I've seen this flag before. It's Lebanon. That's the one.
You're absolutely brilliant.
It's the flag with the tree. And I always remember there's
flag with the tree.
And it is, that's how I remember it. It's odd, like pub
dear.
quiz style, when you get odd world maps. I've had it before where this flag has come up a few times, and I always remember it as, is it the flag with the tree? Yes, it's Lebanon.
Well, Hawa is from Lebanon, according to his flag, and I think obviously we were able to identify flags that are very unique, and having that tree prominently displayed in the white portion of the flag with the red borders, very, very eye-catching. And I've never seen a racer from Lebanon before, as far as I'm aware. So I just saw the flag for the first time, and it never occurred to me to look in our broadcaster information to figure out where he was from. But yes, indeed, from Lebanon, and from Lebanon back to Poland, Jarzabowski trying to make a pass on the 199. That's been on a free fall as of late. Martin Lawrence did, in fact, get by the 199 and has set their sights on Svinček. So maybe Martin Lawrence has something for Svinček here. Maybe Jarzabowski has something for Madre.
And speaking of as well, we've got I'm sure it will be brought up in the next ream of stewarding announcements. The 141 has managed to amass themselves a 5-second penalty, but so has Felix Rupert in the
Oh
71.
no! Oh, you hate that. I'm sure that's going to come out in the stewarding decisions, but you hate that. If the 141 gets that penalty and Rupert doesn't, you've hit the jackpot. At this time, the only one that's hit the jackpot is Chris Melbourne, way out in front of the field for Volante. Let's take a look at the old penalty report. Here are all the penalties or all the decisions rather, that have been made since we last spoke. Racing incident between the 782 and the 141. Racing incident between the 185 and the 404. Stewards note that neither car gave each other a lot of room and contact was made. No further action for an incident with the 197 as there was a lag spike. 5-second penalty for car 71 for an aggressive overtake with position gained. Racing incident for minor contact between the 71 and the 8. 5-second penalty for car 141 for a dive bomb and leaving no room for car 199 out of the turn. Warning for car 199 for moving under braking. 15-second penalty for car 722 for taking out the 100. We saw that earlier. No further action for minor contact between the 199 and the 8. Racing incident minor contact between the 107 and the 501. Racing incident minor contact between the 199 and the 107. And no further action for minor contact between the 8 and the 782. Well, I will tell you that there have been a lot of stewarding actions that needed to be taken, and for two of the top three cars, it has resulted in 5-second penalties. I'm curious about the 141 one. Of course, the stewards have all the angles. They must have determined that they impeded the progress of another driver and forced them to do something unnatural on the racetrack while gaining a position. And you don't normally see that. Normally it's contact that leads to a position change, not necessarily just impeding somebody else, but one certainly can be as bad as another. And here is potentially what we're talking about. Yes, indeed. That right there is what the 5 seconds is for, because not only was the position surrendered to them, it also lost them additional places at the time. And forcing them off the track certainly is probably what caused them to get a 5-second penalty. You got to share the road. You cannot force other cars track.
And there you go. So that will start to change the game. I mean, for the 70, they just mean I think they've gone from laughing to rolling around on the floor. For them, it's just the best day. And can you get any closer, boys? The 722 and the number 8. I think there's a room for just about another coat of paint in there. Even though this is not for position in class, there's nothing saying that you don't have to surrender your position to a pro driver. And the 722 quite happy to stay in their 11th position.
Yes, indeed. Of course, Baugh had to come down pit lane. Unlike a time penalty where you can serve it on your stop, drive-through, you have to come in within 3 laps of receiving the penalty. So is forced to do that and is now behind the silver field. By the way, something happened to the driver from Lebanon as they have dropped all the way back to 3rd in class. The 185 of Rossi back in front of them. So that's interesting because they would have had to have lost 2 or 3 seconds to get to that point. I wonder if maybe they ran wide or something of that nature. But nevertheless, Hala is still on the back of Rossi. Hala will want to be getting a move on there. Get back in front of Rossi, gain some more time because that 15-second penalty is going to set them back massively in a very close race for the podium positions in high silver. The 271, despite the damage, has continued on the track. Uh, they are the last runners in the race currently. So we have had several retirements in this race, but the 271 not one of them. So I think they might get the Spirit of the Race award this week.
Ooh, and it might be all over for the 722. The number 8's looked up the inside, got it done. I mean, once again, just about enough room for the Porsche, but see what the problem is. Hungaroring, the front straightaway is a long old straight, a lot longer than you think. 722 gonna overcook it? No, they managed to keep their car just about on the apex. The 8 will be definitely wanting to make up the time. There ain't
Oh
any
no!
racetrack there, my boy. Oh, yes, there is.
Oh, the 722 of Hala knew he was going to want the inside. So instead of trying to go there, he oh my goodness. So there's an elbow
Huh?
there. The 722's off, by the way. There's an elbow there after turn one where it continues to turn back to the right. A lot of people will jump all the way to the right to try and maximize that corner. Hala did no such thing. He stayed as far to the left as possible. And car off there. Who is that behind Mark? That was the 722. I see. So the 722 has retired.
Yeah, they're not on my screen anymore either. 722 has officially retired from the race. This is the number 8 getting around the Rossi, the 185. They'll decided that they don't want the same battle that they had in the rearview mirror. Number 8 now just trying to regain any amount of time up to the pro field to get some form of points.
Tommy in chat said earlier, Chris is flying. The rubber from the lap before is hitting the windscreen. I think we're entering Superman levels of speed here. British GT fan said, "Sorry, I'm a bit late to the party." And also, British GT fan, you were correct. That Lebanon is where Hala was from, but the Lebanese driver has since left the race, rather unfortunately. I wonder if maybe that was a bit of frustration, perhaps.
Possibly. Hard to tell. I first thought that they had a mechanical issue. You saw the car just sort of drift off straight. You know, when we've seen wheels disconnect and other problems, the car will behave in that way. But we may never know.
Well, I can tell you there have been some additional penalties. 5 seconds for the 199 penalty given. It was it was initially a warning for the 199 for moving under braking. Since it was their second warning, it was increased to a 5-second penalty, as is standard. So a 5-second penalty for the 199 for moving under braking. 5-second penalty for the 782, overtaking with contact on the 199. And Jake the Bosmeister Boswell is riding again. So I assume there's going to be one incoming in just a moment. Getting a bit sloppy in the middle stages of this one, Ryan.
Yeah, possibly that some of the drivers, you know, they've almost finished their stint. Either maybe a bit of tiredness, a bit of fatigue, or just a bit of, you know, frustration. If you've been stuck behind this driver for, you know, so long, you just want to get by them. And I think the term "by all means necessary" should not be taken literally. I think by all means necessary, you know, within the limits. That's why we have the live stewards here, and we might have to get them some more pencils, Jesse.
I've just noticed a couple of things that are quite humorous.
He has noticed it.
If Svinchek can get a bit of a move on here, they could get a position from the 782, right? But Horshaven and Rupert are going to end up being completely. It's going to be 0-0 after this pit stop. All that's going to do is help Chris Milliburn. But my Spirit of the Race winner, Keller, in the 271, is going to finish on the high silver podium.
Yeah, so long as they actually, as long as that car keeps plowing around and makes it to the checkered so that they're classified, yeah, they've got a third position.
Folks, it's story time with Jesse now. We're gonna dim the lights a little bit. Gonna start a fire. I'm gonna open up the big book of stories here. Okay, these aren't grim fairy tales. These are just life lessons. Folks, don't quit. Whenever you were a lad and your coach told you the only way that you're actually a loser is if you quit. Turns out that isn't just BS. That's true. Because look at Keller. Look at Keller right now. They were having a miserable day. They were sixth in class, and there were cars that had incidents before them and after them, but they're the only ones that kept going. And look what happened. Still getting a podium place position. They're going to get a boatload of points here, and they might end up fighting for a position that matters in the championship in 1 week's time because of it. My message to all of you this evening is the same message I always have. Don't be a quitter. Don't give up.
And my soundboard does not work for the claps, but yes. And we've had a very similar in the RCI World Tour when our team we were driving around in the rain at Kyalami. We had the Audi on a dry setup. Well, not exactly what you want for a soaking wet Kyalami. I even remember the interview that you had with one of our drivers, and they they said, the question is, why did you pick the Audi? And the response was, we're all questioning that for the last about 6 hours. But, we kept going around. We finished well down the order, but we had fun. And it gave us just like, I think we got 1 point from that race. Yeah, it kept us in contention at least a little bit towards the end.
I'll tell you this from my personal experience. I've won races that I deserved to win, and I've won races I didn't. And funnily enough, the ones I didn't deserve to win were the nicer surprise. They felt like you had accomplished something when you weren't the best car, when you didn't have the right strategy, when it didn't go all your way and you win anyway. That is the sweetest thing you'll ever taste in your life. Knowing that it wasn't perfect, but you kept your head down, you kept yourself in it, and you were able to get it done. And that is the best sort of feeling, and I can't explain what that feels like, to go from frustration and in some cases anger, and you put your heart and soul in something and it doesn't go your way, but you keep going, and then something magical happens. I don't know, maybe somebody up front of you has a mistake in certain series. Obviously, you can have cautions and safety car periods and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden everything's reset and it's game on, or you just can't give up. And you can't give up because you don't know how it's going to turn out in the end. You've got to keep going, and you've got to see it through. And a lot of times, racing drivers will give up, and that is a bit of a problem for some. And it's an acquired skill to kind of get over stuff quickly and focus on the bigger picture in some cases. You learn it sooner or later, otherwise you don't make it in the business for very long. Speaking of the 271, they are the first takers on pit lane. This is a scheduled stop for that McLaren, as they are within 67 minutes of the finish of the race. So they're going to go ahead and do their driver change, put a new driver in the car, fill it up with fuel, and take it to the checkered flag here today.
Yeah, just a nice sort of easy cruise for the 271. Like I said, all what they have to do is finish and be classified, and that's about it. And that's all about you can call for them. And this battle's still hotting up. I was wondering, would Felix Rupert in the 71 actually, mount an attack on the 141? It did look like it briefly. You can see that they want to be close. Just wondering if the rubber on that 71 is just a little bit too used up. It seems that the Bentley manages to get away through the corners. 71 appears better under the brakes though. But normally I would say that that's the other way around. I wouldn't say that a Bentley would get away from a Ferrari in the corners.
Well, this gap was nearly 2 seconds at one point, but Rupert has clawed it back. I think you're right. I think maybe just going a bit away from the 141, and maybe Rupert fell back because they weren't pushing quite so hard and have a little something left in the tank. By the way, we've had a couple of more penalties going on, and well, 5-second penalty for car 199 for a third warning for avoidable contact with the 404. That warning, of course, because it's a additional warning, is also a 5-second penalty. I think they have like 10 seconds worth of penalties now, and a 5-second penalty for car number 8, aggressive overtaking with contact. If we were playing bingo, somebody might already have it by now with all these 5-second penalties.
We haven't had Connect 4 that yet, though, you see.
Oh yes, we
The one
haven't
eh,
we haven't done yet.
we haven't had the 107 or the 404 or any of those boys. If they got a 5-second penalty, then we could play Connect 4. But currently, Robin Barr
I like the way you think.
Robin Barr has broken this. Basically, we need the number 8 to get his super speed back on and get all the way up to 5th so that we can have Connect 4 and then break it again.
It's a good point. Robin Baugh has speed in that 8, and I don't know if the second driver will quite be as quick. We'll have to find out. But even with the 5-second penalty, that 8 car's not out of it for a top 5 yet. That is still a possibility with their speed with an hour to go. Mind, we're only about halfway into this race so far. By the way, the 199 has come in. GoProp's been installed into that car, and their mandatory stop is complete. The same is true for the 185 with, I assume, not Rossi in the car. It is Strappa in the 185 as they are down and away from pit lane as well. Of course, any of those cars that did have a penalty have cleared it in the pit lane. Of course, Shaven will certainly want to keep the 71 behind him for a lot of reasons. For one, you got to stay on top of the points championship. That has to be in the back of your mind. And an excellent move here, in my opinion, by the Ballas Esports Ukraine team. Under pressure, get the car in, do the undercut, and get out from under that pressure. But if you are Felix Rupert from the Rim Welton Esports team, it's the opposite of that, isn't it, Mawson? Do the absolute best lap of your life around here to see if you can't leapfrog them now.
Yeah, now for the 71, it is go time. Now that the traffic has been cleared, and in fact they've got completely clear track ahead of them. They're on probably the best part of the circuit, exactly where you want to be. No traffic, no nobody. Now they need to push whatever rubber is left on the tires of that 71 Ferrari and just try and come out ahead of the 141. For Chris Melbourne, I think in the 70 as well, I think they will be running as long as they dare, or as long as the stint timer will let them, because they're so far in front and the clear air, you know, it's beneficial to them. They can run the car even lighter for the second half.
But Volante is sitting there like, whatever you guys are doing, I just don't want to get involved. I just don't want to have any part of it. It's going really well for them today, and you just don't want to take part with that. OJM says, glad that the 271 is on for a podium. We've had really rotten luck in the EWC. So for them to get a podium, this might change the team's luck, maybe. Hey, it all starts with one. And you know what they say in any sport, the first win is always the hardest.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And the 71, they're not coming in this time. So it's actually 2 laps that they're going to go for. Trying to get the overcut. 404 as well, jumping back to the connection lost racing. But managing to hang on to the tails of Svenchek. They haven't really managed to scuttle away. I thought that the Bentley might have had the legs over the Mercedes at this track, but Martin Lawrence doing a great job of managing to hang on to the 107. And I think it's going to be very, very close. If Svenchek can put in 1 or 2 fast laps again, they will come out literally on the bumper of the 782.
Well, that I love the strategy of a 2-hour race. It completely changes everything. And we sat here last week, Mawson, and we kind of strategized on what all the teams would do in the pit lane. Turns out none of that was true. And I feel like Rupert was saving a little bit in the 45 minutes in the middle of that stint, but only time will tell about how quick they actually, or how not quick they actually were going to save fuel or perhaps just to save tire because you have to feel like the 141 was pushing all the way, and that pit stop that they did to get Korshaven out of the car and Pitchick in, it certainly looks like that was the right call for them, but is staying out the right call for the 71? We are just about to find out. We're watching Martin Lawrence, and I feel like I say this every week, and I'm not picking on him. Martin Lawrence has had rotten luck. The GT4 championship that wrapped up yesterday was not very kind to Martin Lawrence, as the leader of the race is in. Chris Melbourne for Volante Racing is in the pit lane and will give way to his teammate. And that will hand over the lead to Felix Rupert, the Rinwell Esports team.
Well, we can say it now. The 71, well, they will have led this race now for a couple of laps. I'm really surprised that the 71 has not come in yet. They must be shaving it as fine as they dare on the stint time. I'm guessing they just must be trying to leapfrog the 141 by some margin.
By the way, we've had a steady stream of stewards' decisions coming through the box. Well, judging by their relaxed demeanor, Brian Mawson, I'm willing to believe that they do not have any current penalties to be assessing, or contacts to be assessing, I should say. So good for them. Martin Lawrence in the pit lane as well. As the 70 leaves the pit lane, Ala Pitchick coming through. 70 has not tripped the board. I'm almost certain Chris Melbourne couldn't be in the car. Yes, it is Oliver Setz in the 70. The way that ACC works, of course, is even though the driver is changed until they trip the Sector 1 timing line, it doesn't update for some reason on the scoreboard, even though it updates live on the bottom right third of the screen. So sometimes we were left wondering how the pit stop went, but of course, because they had a green marker beside their number, there's nothing else for it. They had to have changed driver because that is, again, what the minimum pit requirement is. Hey, folks out there watching, as Tobias Strop in the 185 has a drive-through penalty, and that does nothing but help Sim Smeets. Jared Mahalan into the pit lane in the 782. While pit stops continue, have a pit stop yourself. Hope you're well wherever you are in the world on your Friday evening. We do appreciate you being here with us on RCI TV. We hope that you've enjoyed this race as much as we have and are not nearly as out of breath as I have been at several times during this race when they've tried to go 3 and 4 wide into a hairpin corner. But if you have enjoyed, why not like, subscribe, hit the bell for more GT racing content. We will be back with you on Monday evening for the continuation of the Lamborghini Super Cup and for the finale of the GT3 Friday Endurance Championship in 1 week's time. We'll be right back here with you, same time. We would love to have you with us. So like, subscribe, hit the bell. Don't miss a race that we do. We enjoy having you in chat. We enjoy that interaction. And while you're at it, Season 5 of the GT4 Championship is live. It's not a sprint cup this season. It is 80-minute races. There's 8 rounds, 80-minute races, and all GT4 cars. It's going to be brilliant. Felix Rupert brings the leading 71 into the pit lane right at the end of the stint limit, mind you. But on top of that, we would like to thank all of our partners that make this race and every race possible. Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver 61, Fanatec, and Sim Racing GP. You can get 25% off your driver coaching by going to driver61.com and entering our 25% off discount code to get you some driver coaching. Driver coaching is very beneficial. It certainly can make you a better driver, not to mention a faster one at that. You get taught by the pros on what to do, what the right thing to do behind the wheel is. Our main man, Mike, It Really Slaps Jones, had him some driver coaching over at Driver 61 and definitely made him a lot quicker of a driver, or as some of his teammates have told me privately, it made him less of a liability. So that is high praise indeed, mind you, consider who we're talking about. So thank you to all of our partners. And the race does continue here. 52 minutes, the last pit stop being finished. 71 left that really late, didn't he, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean that was shaving it as close as they dare, but it's exactly what they needed. Remember, they were battling the 141, and I thought that they were going to go for the overcut and try put quali laps in just to get that biggest gap. And well, it's worked out well for them. They've now got quite a sizable gap between the 141 now being driven by Pitchick.
Well, I feel like the 141 had their strategy made for them. They had to come in early. They couldn't allow the 71 to get around them. And now you got Shazaria in the 71. And what an excellent job that team did for the Renwelton Esports team, who became an official Renwelton Esports team halfway through this championship. And why not? And they're certainly driving like it. And yeah, they gained the better part of about 3 seconds. They stayed out as long as humanly possible and also was quicker nonetheless. So the overcut sort of worked and worked to great effect. Oliver Sets out front now in the 70, has a 22-second lead for Sets in that Volante team. It's more a job of maintain your focus, maintain your composure than anything else. Fritz Krozen now in the Danglin Wang number 8. I talked about how he might still be on for a top 5 here today if he plays their cards right, and certainly looking like they might get 7th away from Sizek in the 501. That looks like it's struggling a little bit here.
A little bit, but also did you notice how the 71 also had a little bit of a moment coming over the top of the hill here as well. I'm wondering if the Ferraris, you know, when they are quote unquote sort of a cold race, you haven't got the tires up to temperature yet. I wonder if they struggle.
That's a great assessment, Lawson. I think you might be right. I think the cold tires and also a driver that's been sitting around for an hour, I think it has a little bit to do with it. And this is a replay of Shazaria going a bit wide there. We saw that happen a couple times, like you said, and it is strange how both of the Ferraris seemingly did that. So maybe that is a handling quirk of that car. You'd have to imagine, even though it wasn't required, every team took tires. It'd be borderline silly if you didn't. And the big question was, how much fuel did everybody take? And did the 71 gain all that time by being faster in the interim between when the 141 came in and they came in? Or did they do that on fuel strategy and put less fuel in the car? I can tell you that the 71, as pictured here, had a 3-second lead, but it's completely gone now. Oh, a move to the inside by Oliver Pitchick. Nearly rubbing fenders there with the 71, but it still remains Shazaria in front of Pitchick. But how did he lose 3 seconds? Was it that bad?
It kind of does look like it. It just looks like the Ferrari through some of the corners. It's not up to its optimum, and here comes the Bentley, the straight line speed. And I have a feeling that Bentley's on much lower fuel than the Ferrari. Both cars really good on fuel. They're one of the more common cars that you see in a long endurance, you know, just because of the fuel tanks that they hold and the amount of fuel that they burn. But you can see again the Ferrari washing out wide a little bit, and the Bentley's just being able to tuck in. The Bentley is on a couple of laps, sort of warmed up tires, whereas the Ferrari is not. I'm just wondering if that's hurting them too much now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we all saw it. It definitely happened. The 71 had a little bit of a hiccup. The server lost him for a second, picked him up though.
Yeah, that's my only assumption is that the both Ferraris. And speaking of Ferraris, there's Sizek in the background as well. They've lost a bit of time.
Well, you put the new driver in the car and maybe the handling isn't to their liking. And of course, they're cold coming into the car. They've got a cold car, cold everything. And all of a sudden, the race completely changes. And for the 199, who spent the large part of the first half of this race fighting for a podium and then fourth place, to be all the way back into eighth place is mildly defeating. And for that eight to finally get around, I've just noticed that the eight has finally gotten around the 199. That took the better part of 1 hour for that pass to amass, but certainly it's a victory for Rins Krozen, certainly, but it's almost a hollow one because it should have been. He would. The eight team's going to argue that should have been for a podium spot an hour ago, but now unfortunately it was only for the seventh place position.
Yeah, it's still showing the pace what they can do, and I'm sure they'll set their sights on the 404 ahead. He is a long old way up the road, but we've seen crazier things happen.
Yeah, certainly. You just never know. You got to keep on it. You got to keep your mentality. You got to keep your driver focused. And if you have a team admin or a team principal or even if you're the driver that's gotten out of the car, you have to keep the other guy focused in a race like this. It effectively is two 60-minute sprints when you add everything up. So you got to tell him, look, there's still stuff to race for. It doesn't matter if you're sets. It doesn't matter if you're kits. You have to stay focused for the entire 60-minute stint. It certainly it's easier to do that when you have something to chase or you are being chased. But you're out there by yourself. It can be incredibly hard to keep that focus. And a lot of times, I mean, there's all sorts of drivers. There's drivers like our broadcaster, Stewie, for instance, is a very quiet. He doesn't talk to anybody, or he doesn't even like to hear anything other than the car. He likes to be in a almost like a stasis sort of zone. And meanwhile, there's other drivers that sort of love to have that feedback. They love to have that communication, and that they're sort of lost without it. But nevertheless, it's all about keeping your focus. And speaking of being focused, Bart Macha now in the 404, focusing in on Dusan Slizik now in the 107. How many times do you think Connection Lost has raced the 107? I feel like, name a more iconic duo.
It's pretty much every single league that these guys will always sort of magnetize themselves. It doesn't matter what the car is, doesn't matter what the track, where they started. It will always end up that the 107 and the 404 will end up in a battle on the track. It's just, you know, an RCI rule.
Well, you want to talk about competitors that know each other? These two certainly are two of the most what's the word I'm looking for? Familiar. That's it. Two of the most familiar that you will find, the 107 and the 404. And going at it here, it's always interesting to see them. I've said this once before, and they had contact, so I hope I don't jinx them again. They usually don't have contact. They usually race really hard but fair. Hopefully today, Bart Macha can make the fight to them, though seems to be overdriving the car just a little bit in that AMG.
Oh ho ho! And you said it. Look, you didn't say the other thing. You mentioned overdriving. And there we go, the curb, it just lifts up the left side of the car. You can see the engine revs pick up. And I'd say an impact into the left side.
Folks, I have to work with Bart Macha.
You're doomed now.
He's going to watch this broadcast, because he always does. And he's going to get to that part around 44 minutes left in the race. He's going to hear me say that, and I'm going to have an inbox full of expletives.
And at this point, you can hear Jersey Lee leaving the country.
You can't run from Bart Macha. He'll always find you. I was on vacation once and he found me. So rather unfortunately, I'm going to have to bear the brunt of that this weekend when he inevitably watches this broadcast.
Oh, dear. And you were mentioning about drivers earlier on. Yeah, we have the people who are super quiet. You have the people who want some feedback. You didn't mention the third type of driver, Jesse. There's the people of the drivers like me who sit and just like drive around and laugh at everything. And especially if you've got multi-class GT4s, you're driving around, and like my teammate is he left me alone. He thought I was to be super serious, being the faster pro driver in that car. As I'm passing people, going, "We look at the little Janetta." It's like "Are you okay, Ryan?" I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, you can't lose your marbles if you never had your marbles." So, life tip.
I I'd like to say I don't do that, but I told this story on an RCI broadcast once about whenever in-car cameras became a thing in American motorsports, and they put one in NASCAR driver Cale Yardborough's car, and NBC freaked out because they had this weird humming noise over the audio, and they couldn't. They spent it may have been CBS, but the point is they couldn't figure out what the hum was. Every time Cale Yardborough got out on the track and up to speed, there was this very distracting hum in the audio. And they changed relays, they changed hookups, they changed mics, they went to a completely different setup. They unscrewed and tightened. They thought it was harmonic vibration noise, all this other stuff. They did everything they possibly could until 3 races later. What inevitably they did apparently was they used the camera but not the audio. They cut the audio with something else. 3 races later, they're doing qualifying, and the CBS truck notices that the car's off, but they still hear the humming noise. The whole time it was Cale Yardborough mimicking the engine noise of the car. Why? Because Cale Yardborough was bored. And he drove whatever national TV affiliate crazy for weeks trying to figure out what that noise was. And that's you, Ryan Mawson. That's you in the race car. You're living your best life.
Pretty much, I'm sure I would send most teammates crazy over the 12-hour race. Every time I would pass someone, it's just look, it's the Janetta again. Like yes, we know we've passed it many times. Yes, but we've passed it this time.
We had a joke the other week. I was stewarding for Night Owl the other week. You were there, Mawson, in fact, when it was raining, and every time we brought up an incident to review, we mentioned to chief steward at the time or head steward at the time, "Do you know it's raining?" Every single time. Listen, folks, sometimes you got to make your own fun.
Exactly. And you've got to give the stewards some fun. It's a thankless job here at RCI. A lot of times, you've got to keep the racing fun and enjoyable for the other people. Downside of that is the stewards have the life sapped out of them. It's why I always loved when they came to do the live stewarding for the Night Owl. We would get funny track maps. That was always a good time a time sink for
Oh
the
dear.
stewards to do.
Phil Roberts, who head steward tonight, I'm pretty sure. Correct in saying, ever since he's become head steward, he's had a lot on his plate. He's of course managing an entire what I call the army of stewards, and he doesn't quite have the time he used to. But Phil Roberts used to make us very funny track maps with renamed corners, and very very memey, and also sometimes uh, fairly
Accurate.
yeah, fairly accurate as well. I'm not going to go into detail. Some of his corner names were inventive, we'll say.
That's also very accurate. That's the that's the sad thing. And well, what can we say about these two still battling it out. 38 minutes to go, and pretty much once again we've ended up exactly like what we did at the start of the race. It's Porsche versus Porsche. It's just the order has changed. It's now the eight's turn to defend for his life, and maybe the 199 has the pace. But once again, what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for a mistake, really, is what you're doing. You're looking, the 199 is looking for a mistake from the 8, and you have the speed enough to hang with him. It's just, I could force it and maybe get another penalty, which you don't want, because that's just put you back right where you started. So you're sort of hoping for a mistake, maybe get your nose in there. Certainly at this stage of the race, you don't want to do anything drastic here. You're sort of in no man's land. You're not near the end of the race. You're not at the beginning either. And you're confident this is your fight. You may not see another fight in this race. So if you are the 199, it's all about making sure whatever decision you make is the right one now. You don't really see this in these races where the further you get into them, the less erratic the driving becomes, the less desperate they become. That, of course, is right up until the last couple of laps. But at this point, you're sort of settled into whatever battle you have, and that's what you're seeing out of the 199 right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, get it to about the 10-minute mark, and then it is go time. All the gloves come off, and generally people will go for those last-minute moves. But yeah, as you said, unless the person in front makes a mistake, which there are numerous places at Hungaroring, you cannot discount that anywhere on this track. The chicane at the top of the hill, coming down the hill, and some of these corners running wide, and we've seen that curb on the inside. It's a lot steeper than you think. We saw the 404 Mercedes ramp up that, and they had problems. It's sent them off the racing track. It is a circuit where mistakes can happen, but if you can hold your own, it is just so, so, so difficult to pass.
Yeah, we saw the 199 prove that earlier. We saw that Madre, if you can just put your car on the apex in the middle of the corner, it didn't really matter the speed advantage of anyone else. And maybe a little bit of payback right here for Prince Crozen for his teammate, parking his car right where it needs to be. Just looks like the 199 can't get quite as good of a run off of the corners to contest at the end of the long straightaway. You'd expect him to be getting a little bit of a tow, but it just isn't quite enough. And the H just doing again what the 199 was doing to their team earlier, just parking it on the apex, not giving them a legitimate chance to do the overtake. And that's good enough for right now.
Yeah, for right now, it's the question is, can you keep that up? Lap after lap. You've got to be smart with your defending, which the 199 was doing really well of in the early part of this race. You don't want to defend too hard because that will slow you down, and then you're putting yourself at an opportune to be passed. But you need to defend enough to where the car behind, they can't make a move anymore. And well, going back into the silver pack as well, what can we say for Sam Smeet's day, the 95? They've basically been promoted to the lead and just had a lovely old time. Really, we haven't talked about them much apart from the battle with the Aston Martin. Sometimes that's the better way. You've had a quiet race, and that's that.
Sim Smith's in the 95 team, the High Speed Ninjas team. They, of course, they saw everyone in front of them sort of have incidents or have penalties fall away from the race, and they ended up being the one in the driver's seat. Again, it's going to be if they can bring this home, it's going to be the sweetest wine they've ever had because they didn't come in here as the favorite. They didn't come in here as the fastest qualifier. They were sort of in the middle somewhere, and then all of a sudden, you become the car that stayed out of trouble. You become the car that didn't have any issues. And all of a sudden, you find yourself in a position where you are way out in front. And I believe Sim Smeet's teammate was watching the broadcast and knew we were talking about him because that was very awkward to do down the front straightaway, unless you knew you were on camera. So well done, High Speed Ninjas team.
Very much so. And it's for any of the silver teams. Like I said, we do have to still take our hat off to the 271. They're still going around, and also Jesse, if you noticed your spirit of the race, they're not last now. They have gained a position.
Yeah, the A37s had a lot of frustrating laps here. They had, of course, issues and now find themselves 13th. Of course, might be the last running team, but they're not the last team in the race. Keep in mind, we started with 17 or 18 teams. So even though they're last of the running order, they are not technically last, and points are points. They will beat some pro cars today, mind you. As Minnow Crozen, we've got both the Crozens in the cars at the same time. They're not driving together, rather apart. one in a Bentley, one in a Porsche. Well, Minnow is trying to get by Shazaria here. Ivan in chat pointed out what happened to the 71. The fourth place car, this particular car, the front left tire scrubbers team, was catching them very quickly. We don't know, Ivan. We talked about that earlier, that the 71 was actually second, had a 3-second lead, and in the span of 2 laps got ran down by Pitchick and passed. We're not sure if maybe Shazaria just doesn't have quite the pace or there's something up with that car. Maybe the balance of it's a little bit off after the pit stop, but certainly after Shazaria got in the car, the pace sort of went away. And now, fighting for the final spot in the podium, Minnow Croson will certainly like to help himself to that spot.
Yeah, just waiting for a an opportunity again. I'm keeping an eye on the 71. They do appear to have picked up the pace though once again. I think that the Ferrari takes quite a while to get up to its full racing pace. You know, we saw them when they were cold tires that they were really struggling, but now got back in front, seem to be doing quite well. With 31 minutes left to go, I think now is where some of the moves will start to become, because you start getting down into sprint levels of fuel, and you've only got to make the tires last half an hour, so just sort of go for it.
If you're wondering about penalties or anything, well, there hasn't been any. There's nary been any contact, rather, besides Minnow Croson going down the inside and might just have this done easy as you like for the 782. A change for third position. Minnow Croson, the front left tire scrubbers esports team, up into third, making it a Bentley lockout. 1, 2, 3 for the top spots. Hard to tell what the standout car here is, Ryan Mawson. Certainly flummoxes me, but GoProf trying to make the pass here on the 8. Got close that time on Rins, trying to go around the outside as Rins goes over the curb to the inside, and that'll be all she wrote for that move. But it's getting a little bit on, almost on cue by you, by the way, saying that it's getting about go time. And right, you are. A move here, trying to hang around the outside. If you can hang around the outside, you do have a shot, but Rins knows that and covers very well, and they all go back into order. Of course, this is a fight for seventh place position.
Especially when you're both, in matched cars. If it's very hard to go around the outside of your fellow Porsche in a Porsche, and we've had a brief moment with the 71. Apparently, they've lost quite a lot of time on the car that they had. A little bit of a tap over the hill, but unless it's not being caught by our replay cameras.
We got a bit of grass. He got a bit of grass there as well. He went too far left over the chicane, which upsets the car. It doesn't matter. By the way, it doesn't matter what car you're in when you go over that curb. It upsets it no matter what it is. A GT car, rally car, Formula One car. It's all a bit silly, and it will spit you off onto the grass. Many a cars have spun back onto the track after hitting the grass on the right side, exiting that chicane. Not the case for the 71, but certainly something amiss there as they lost quite a bit of time. And this is the pass, by the way. This is the pass for third. That's Minnow Croson going around Shazaria in the 71. Nice pass down to the inside. Just had a little bit more speed exiting the final turn. Gets it done into one and got it done so well. In fact, didn't even have to cover on the exit.
No, that is the Bentley's advantage sometimes, is if you can manage to get it all hooked up. That is the thing with the Bentleys. It just wants to spin the rear wheels. If you can get it to hook up, it is great. A little bit of curb use from the 71, a bit of hopping. Still nothing as of yet, or is it in the fast left? Ooh. Bit of a twitch. But no, maybe nothing sort of super crazy. Maybe it's just that the 71 is still harrowing some time.
It was just that. Yeah, it was just that. It was the chicane. They got over the curb. They had to catch it, but we saw that a couple times there. The 71 having to catch the car. I don't know if that's Shazaria. I think that has something to do with the car's balance.
Possibly so. I mean,
Oh,
uh,
but
oh,
but
there is a
they've
lot
been
of
into
damage.
something now. Well, they've definitely something's definitely happened now as they've lost a spot to Dusan Slizik, and they've definitely had a crash just now.
Oh,
Struggling to get it into the pit lane here.
nearly
The
missed the pit lane.
suspension the suspension clearly damaged there. Toe link knocked out on the 71. As our broadcaster Stewie doing the Lord's work here, trying to find what happened. Certainly a frontal impact, Ryan Moss, and heavy damage.
Front left, so I'm possibly thinking it's something over the hill. That was the last time where you saw the 71. They were coming up the hill. Maybe they've done what we saw the 404 do. You can see the 71 come through. It's the fast left as we start to come up the hill, heavy into the Armco.
I just feel like after the pit stop, the handling was off on that 71. I don't know why. I don't know what happened, but the tire change, maybe the pressures were wrong. We've seen that a number of times. The 71 sitting in the pit lane. By the way, do you like gossip, ladies and gentlemen, on your Friday evening? I have I have insider information that the stewards are looking into contact between the 199 and the 8 whenever they were fighting one another. So they're looking at it, and I'm curious because now you will notice Max Goprov is now in front of the 8, and the stewards are definitely looking at an incident involving those two cars. So maybe a forceful overtake. Ellis Buckley said those two Porsches have been nose to tail all race. You're not kidding, Ellis. You are not kidding. Good evening to Cracker as well in chat. And wait, is Cracker Chris Melbourne? I think he is. Yeah, I think he is. And if you are Chris Melbourne, what a mega stint by you.
Yeah, I was gonna say if so, my God, the 70 picked up, and when it was it's like, oh look, the 70 has got past the 199. Oh look, the 70 has now lapped everybody. It was just a monumental pace at the start. But also, Jesse, yeah, you mentioned what the dominant car might be here. I mean, looking at the leaderboard, I really can't tell. I don't know what you think. Personally, I think that the
Look,
Porsche
look,
has done really well. You see.
look, look, look. Rinwelt in esports was third. Okay, so they were
Very
in
true.
there, and then you had the 199 and the 8. They have had issues and penalties. To
What we
be
could
fair, though, most of these drivers had have penalties. I'm trying to make excuses here. You're
what
absolutely right.
we can say that the Bentley is very consistent. There you go. We'll say that it's
Look,
just consistent.
well, considering there's 4 of them in the race and they're all running in the top 4,
Yes.
that's consistently good. Yes.
Oh dear. It will be definitely interesting to see what the outcome of the 199 and the 8 is as well, because yeah, these guys have been at it, but I did think that that would happen. If we look now, the 199 is gapping the 8, so they definitely had the
Mm.
pace. It's just what we saw right at the start of the race: two matched cars and Hungaroring. Where do you pass? It is incredibly, incredibly difficult to make a pass stick. And you can go too wide for a good 2, 3, 4, 5 corners.
Well, I saw the stewards investigating or looking at something between the overtake from the 199 and the 8. I think we're gonna try and find that overtake as well. Um, but whatever they were reviewing, they have since stopped reviewing it. So either they've decided it was nothing, or they have decided or they're taking a long old time to bring it out. Here is the overtake, by the way, the 199 on the outside here, trying to make the overtake. Can't quite get it done there. And judging by what they were looking at, it's on the what I would call a back straight, even though it isn't. It's the straightaway leading into the chicane. So we're going to take a look here. Everything looks fine to this point. A little bit of daylight, but you know there's impending disaster, right?
And here we go. So the 199 gets the better run coming up to the chicane. Late on the brakes. Too wide through it. And there's a bit of a touch
Ah,
there.
yes. What's your take on that, Mawson?
It's a difficult one there because it is most times not too car wide. I think I'd have to look at what the actual guidelines are, for cars alongside. The 199 was technically in front, but they were also off, they were on the outside of the corner. But was it the 8 still had priority? It's a difficult one.
Yes, indeed. If Chris Melbourne's still in chat, I've got a question for him specifically. Did you know that was it a conscious effort to try and get out front as quickly as possible, or was that just you seizing the opportunity? Also, follow-up question: did you know that the Volante Racing team was that fast? Did you know your Bentley was that quick in race trim, or was that a surprise to you as well? Uri Svinchek says yes. Bentley might be the strongest, but it's also the weakest. Look at last. I got a story about that, by the way. Um, in IMSA, there was a time back when GTD, the GT Daytona category, I don't know if I don't remember if it was Lamborghini or who it was. They felt that their BOP was off. They would win. They won like half the races one year, and they complained that, oh well, we don't have the power down the straights as some of the other teams. And IMSA was like, what are you on about? You won half the races. Like, yeah, we may have won half the races, but there's always a there's always a Lambo that finishes last too. And IMSA bought it, and they gave them more power.
Yeah, but I mean that was a similar thing that happened, kind of similar but kind of not. Remember when Ford brought the GT back for Le Mans, and
Ah, yes.
they loaded the cars up far too much for every race, so that they were terrible, and they complained and said, "We are terrible. We need good bop, please." Uh, Surprisingly, they wanted it at Le Mans when it was the anniversary of the original Ford GT winning Le Mans. I mean, this is just complete pure speculation, ladies and gentlemen. But surprisingly, then they were given it, and the Ford GTs completely blew everyone out of the water.
There's another Lamar story right there too. There was a rule put in the Lamar rule book specifically because of Toyota, because Toyota would show up to test days and they would show up to every practice and they would sandbag. They'd run it on full lean fuel mapping. They'd run it without the hybrid turbos and all of that. And they would say, "Oh well, look at our relative pace to some of the other teams to Porsche and all that," and then they would go into the qualifying and they would run a tenth or two quicker to get pole, right? And they'd win the race and they'd have a lap that was several seconds quicker. Eventually, the FIA or WC got annoyed at that and put in a sandbagging rule. This was mid 2000 teens, I believe, where you couldn't be a percentage quicker than you were in practice or qualifying in a race lap. Otherwise, you got a nice stop go penalty of some variety or a time penalty. Very, very interesting that that was the case. And Toyota stopped sandbagging, and well, WC got boring for a while.
I think I anytime that anyone mentions like Toyota, well, Toyota from a few years ago, Rebellion and Le Mans, I get nervous twitches because between a few friends of ours, when you're a big motorsport nut, you watch racing, you take part in virtual racing, and we have funny bets on these on real racing to make it what's going to happen in the virtual. So, for example, we all had to pick a car from each category for Le Mans. And ladies and gentlemen, I suggest you play this game with your friends if you've got some and you watch Le Mans, because it's hilarious. It makes it way more fun. Pick a car from each category, and which is maybe your favorite, not necessarily the favorite to win the race, just the car you like or the drivers you like or such. And you score the points where they finish. So if they finish first, you score 1 point. If they finish 17th, you score 17 points. Person with the lowest points at the end wins. And in our case, we decided what the loser was going to drive in the next league race that we did. Meaning you could get a pink writer and you would have to run a pink writer. And I was really winning right up until the moment where Rebellion came in for their last pit stop and the car refused to hot start. And I watched Toyota soar by. Just because Rebellion couldn't make a car hot start, I lost the bet.
Oh dear. I do have a answer to a couple of questions I had. I told you that the stewards were reviewing something involving the 199 of the 8, and they have pushed out a penalty for that. And oh dear, speaking of which, we've got some more interesting things going on track. 5-second penalty for car 199, overtaking the 8 with contact. The 199 deemed to not have left space enough for the 8 to drive through the chicane. And so 5-second penalty for 199, not leaving space during an overtake causing contact. And also a drive-through penalty for car 404. That is not a RCI penalty. That is an ACC penalty for track limits for Bart Macha in the 404. And what was going their way was a bit frustrating and will continue to be frustrating. They had that off, as you will remember, and now are back into the clutches of the 199 and the 8. And on top of that, a drive-through penalty.
And for Crozen in the 8, this is, the best news possible. They, the 404 and the 199 are battling. They're slowing each other up. He's now got a 3-second gap. So all that the 8 has to do is keep relative pace, and he will gain his position back. What will be interesting is when the 404 has to serve their drive-through, can the 199 pull enough of a gap so that they don't fall behind the 8? It looked like a little bit ago anyway that the 199 had so much more pace and that they were just rocketing away, but 16 minutes of the race left to go. They definitely will have used up some of those tires.
Yeah, they certainly will have done, and it's going to show up in the final 15 minutes. We've seen that all season. The final 15 minutes is a different animal, and you could find yourself in just a bit of trouble here late if you've maybe used up your stuff. So we know the 404 is going to go back, and we know there's a 5-second penalty for the 199. And if Rins Crozen in the 8 can stay within 5 seconds here, Rins Crozen, after all of that, could still get a top 5 finishing position as Bart Macha defends that position as if his life depends on it all the way to the wall. And I'm sure that Max Goprov does not appreciate that at all. And unfortunately, it is the right of Bart Macha to do that as long as he's on the track. But drive-through penalty, he's only got, what do you reckon, about one more lap, you think? Or he has to come in and serve that penalty?
It's generally 3 laps that you get given if you and I've fallen prey to this before. If you leave it to where it says 0 laps remaining to serve your drive-through, you will be disqualified. Don't try that, drivers. I've already tried that for you. Trust me, it doesn't work. So it's got to be, I think it's this lap or maybe the next one. But then the 404 will have to come in. And like I said, that's when I'm interested to see, will the 199 be able to run away enough from the 8? I mean, look, the gap is now closing even more to the 8. They're 2 seconds behind. They were 3.8 the last lap.
Yes, indeed. It is closing in. It's all coming to a head. Final 14 minutes of the race. Very cloudy. We've had a lot of cloudy races in RCI recently. And this one completely overcast as well. The track was very warm and it stayed warm. In fact, it hasn't changed at all in this 2-hour race. That's actually rare that it doesn't change at all. And otherwise, it's very close stuff, as I was correct. I think Bart stayed out as long as he possibly could do, but had to come in this time to serve that drive-through penalty. Doesn't have to stop, just has to get down to pit lane speed and cruise to the end of the pit lane. Well, that will drop them several spots, and that releases Max Goprov, who's trying to eke out a 5-second gap on Rins Crozen in the 8. Doesn't have that gap, doesn't have that overlap. It's only about a second right now, but the 199 looking like the quicker of the 2 cars. And Rins could potentially have this top 5, but he has to hang on.
Has to hang on, and I think that they might be able to, as long as they don't get any sort of, a given drive through for track limits. The 199 will have been pushing fiercely to try to get by the 404 and to get away from the 8. That really might have hurt the front tires on that Porsche. I'm just wondering if the 8 might have just a little bit extra to give. You can see they are closing even more down under the second now. Point 0.8, right under the wing now.
Well, I said Rins has to close in. He has to do something here. He doesn't even have to pass him at this point. They're not racing Slizik up there. I mean, realistically, you'd like to do that if you have more pace, but you're not really doing that. You're racing the guy in front of you with so little time left. Something else interesting happened. I thought Bart Macho would end up behind Sizek, but that didn't happen. Macho was able to come out of pit lane and park it on the apex of turn one and stays in front of him. I had by my maths, which turned out to be a bit rough. I thought Macho would end up being behind Sizek. That hasn't happened. The 404 car in seventh place and 24 seconds behind. However, I don't think he'll catch back up to this group.
Likely not with 11 minutes to go, unless someone else gets a really late race drive through, which you'd hate to see that at all. And well, you said that the 8 has to catch up and hang on. Well, that's lap one down, and he's still hanging there.
He sure is. And I thought that GoProv was leaving Crozen in the dust. I really did, because it was more than a second, and that was with him fighting with the 404. But maybe just the 8 had a bad lap or something, because right back on him and not going anywhere is the number 8. And meanwhile, as we look at the field, they are very spread out. The only other cars that are really together, the 404 and the 501, and then you have the 95. Yes, the 95 and Strappa are. Is that Strappa with him? No, that's not even Strappa with him. So that's, oh, excuse me, that's the leader trying to get by the 95. So the leader has lapped up to the 10th place position and is now looking to lap the 9th place car of Sim Smeets.
Absolutely. I mean, the leader just, in another class is the 70. Like all the Bentleys today really have just, been the absolute epitome of consistency. They came in, they knew what they had to do, and like you said, so in chat, Chris Melbourne did sort of confirm for us that they knew they had to get around the Porsche. They knew that their race pace was good, that the Porsche maybe has the edge in the qualifying, and done, dusted, and in the bag almost. Still 24-second gap to the 141, which they've been also on it. They've got a 16-second gap. It's just miles apart at the front. But for these two, nose to tail all race, like you said, you'll be getting bored of seeing a green Porsche in your mirror by now.
I gotta say, I don't think we've ever had a race where two cars were at each other's bumpers all race long, especially this length. You have a sprint race, sure, that happens all the time, but guys, this has been an hour and 50 minutes that the 199 and the 8 have been together. I don't know if they're having fun at this point, or they're frustrated with one another, but one way or another, it's been very entertaining for us to see these two together. I'm sure the 199 disagrees with that penalty as well. They'll be saying, well, I was already past him whenever that happened, but you do have to leave space. You can't just decide that, oh, I'm past you, I'm going to chop your nose off. So they continue to be together. They've gotten several penalties between the two of them and somehow have maintained their positions around each other, despite the fact that they were fighting for 10th at one point, they were fighting for 3rd at one point, and now they're somewhere in the middle. This guy we haven't seen much of today. This is Oliver Setz for Volmont Racing, and he inherited a big old lead from Chris Melbourne, who was in our chat earlier. And by the way, speaking of, he mentioned in chat earlier that he knew that their pace was really good and jumped at the chance to run away, and that was that excellent strategy. It executed as well. Fantastic stuff. Brian Scheckerman has just told us that his teammate is driving with a cast on his left arm.
Oh, I mean, that's one way to do it. You drive with your cast on your left arm, still in P1.
Reminds me of the old days back in the 50s in Formula One, whenever you would have drivers that would have a crash in practice on Friday, and they'd have to go to hospital, and they'd be in a cast or a sling or something, and they wouldn't ever tell the team that. They would take it off. They'd wear it around the sort of the trailer paddock area. For what it's worth, it wasn't much of one back then. But then the second they'd have to go to the back of the garage and get ready to get in the car, they'd take it off and act like nothing happened, get in the car and run the Grand Prix. It's very much that, except that not necessarily lying that it's happening, just sort of like, I'm going to do it anyway. That's the fighting spirit for you.
Oh, absolutely. But fighting spirit still being shown here. 95. 6 minutes to go, boys. So don't worry, you can tell him that he's only got a handful of laps left to go, and then you can relax that arm.
Just reading some other stuff from the chat. I was watching some of the drivers in the race have a go at one another. Jordan Daly says track limits here are harsh. Learned that in the staff event. Yeah, I think the very first Night Owl race we ever did, me and Mike Jones learned that, just how unforgiving they are on some of these corners when you run wide in them. The 141 have a great pace, so I knew I had to outrun them while I could, or while they fight rather. Excellent strategy. That's true. It's like, look, rule number one of racing is keep the car on the track, keep it on the black stuff, right? But the rule number two has to be don't give your opponent anything, and don't make mistakes, right? So don't make mistakes when you don't need to make mistakes. You don't have to be the fastest car on the track to win. How many times do we see the fastest car not win? It's frustrating if you are the fastest car and you don't win, but also it's not always about being fast. It's about having strategy. It's about being opportunist. But I still think the 70 is the fastest out here today. That gap continues to go up 24 seconds now.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you can combine those two things, if you can combine great speed with great strategy and great consistency, then it's an unbeatable force. I mean, the name that comes to mind when we mention that is a Ryan race team, for example. That is just the ultimate endurance team, really, that we've seen them do monumental things. But yeah, being the fastest car sometimes is not all of it. I've seen plenty of times, even in leagues that I've raced in, where you start, you're miles down the grid, you think, I haven't got, a hope here. There's plenty of faster people. What can I do about this? And well, what you can do about it is keep it on the road and end up back in front anyway. Speaking of keeping it on the road, is that the 107 of Slizik that has appeared in the shot?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a 5-second gap about 10 minutes ago. It's completely gone away as GoProv has caught Slizik. Remember about 15 minutes ago when I said that these two were only racing each other? Shows how much I know, as Dusan Slizik has had a little bit of a struggle here with the pace of the car. And of course, GoProv is going all out to try and gap Rins Krozen, which hasn't worked, but they have caught Slizik in front. So now Rins Krozen here could end up fourth in this race. Think about this. If GoProv gets around Slizik, creates an opportunity for Rins Krozen to get through, and Krozen doesn't even have to pass GoProv at that point. He still gets fourth.
I was going to say, and then, yeah, with the 5-second penalty, it really plays it. If anything, it kind of looks like the H has dropped back a moment, which is
Smart.
often, yeah, what you want to do. You want to monitor the situation in front. Obviously, the 199 flashing the lights as well as the 8. Everyone wants to get by. They don't want to be held up at all. Oh, and there's a slide from the 199.
A touch. It was a touch. The 8 did that and didn't mean to do that. Gave the position back here. Now, will that be an offsetting 5-second penalty for removing them out of that situation. They stop, so it won't be anything more than a 5-second penalty. But we've seen that happen earlier where they elected to give a warning instead of a penalty. Now that's going to be very interesting in the dying embers of this one.
2 minutes 50 left on the clock. Only a couple of laps left for our leader, so the stewards are going to have to get their pens out again and have a quick smidge at that one before we end. But yeah, for the 199, that will have just been such an annoying moment. They were right on the back for Slizik though. That is exactly what they wanted.
By the way, Sheckerman in chat said that his teammate is in a cast and is still faster than he is. That's that's incredible. You know that old saying, I could beat you with one hand tied behind my back."
Yeah, quite literally, we are
He's quite
taking it.
literally
Yeah,
doing that to some of these other teams.
we are taking that to the extreme. Then again, I've known some drivers who are very much like that. There is a driver that I race with, and he races around at RCI a lot and stuff as well. Jordan Grant Smith. I'm pretty sure that we've been racing before, and he's been one hand just memeing, and there's me actually trying. It's like, can you slow down? Oh, sorry. It's like, please
There's
slow down.
there's this quite humorous video that was sort of a meme a year or two ago of an iRacer who is using one finger. He's using his index finger to drive the car in a race, and he's just driving by people like they're standing still. And it's clear that there's a mismatch, and I don't know how this happens in iRacing, but there's a very clearly a mismatch in skill in this particular race. And he's literally, obviously he doesn't have force feedback on, but he's driving one finger on his wheel, just driving by people. He drives by like 5, 6 people in this race, and he's doing it with one finger. And he's in a Discord call and he's laughing with his friends. It's a whole thing, and it's like, I don't know if I'm more impressed that he can drive like that, or I'm offended that I'm slower than he is.
And well, coming over the radio and looking out the window, white flag is waved. The number 8 desperately trying to get by the 199. Another move, but not to be, taking the executive decision to take the run-off area. And for the 70, for all of the sets in the Volante Racing, it's one more time around this track. It will be 69 laps. Nice, completed. And what else can you say about this team, really? Just apart from phenomenal pace. They had the strategy, they had the setup, they obviously had the race pace, and that's it. Look at that, even got a lovely clean car. They haven't even been off track. I'll have to go and throw some dirt on it to make it look like it's been in the race.
The only cars they had to pass today was, well, one on the initial start, and then after that, it was all lap cars and back markers. And it's been just about a perfect day for Volante Racing Aztec Sim Sport. And Oliver Setz gets to bring the car home, was brought to him in pristine condition by Chris Melbourne, and it's going to be a complete day from them today. They're going to lead it basically flag to flag, took the lead at the exit of turn 1 and turn 2, and have led ever since, barring, of course, whenever pit stops occurred for just a few moments. It's about a perfect day. They needed it to stay in this championship conversation, and they're going to get it. They're going to go into the final race of this championship down just about 30 points and with a realistic shot of winning the championship. Ala Pitchik did everything they could. This team did not qualify particularly brilliantly. 5th place is where they qualified, but they do exactly what they always do. The Boss Esports Ukraine team always race better than they qualify. They always stick their foot in the ground, and they always get a result, and they've done that again today. It didn't look like it was going to be, but it is a 2nd place for the 141 and a nice championship lead going into the final round. It's all on them to do. 3rd place for Minnow Crozen, the 782. Where did Front Left Tire Scrubbers Esports come from? Well, it doesn't matter. They finished on the podium, and an excellently ran race by that team will be rewarded with a 3rd place finish. Dusan Slizik for GL Engineering, the 107. They are going to finish fourth here today. They've certainly seen a thing or two in the middle of this field today, but will get a fourth place finish. By the way, Ritz Crozen has gotten around the 199, and they've all gotten around the 404. But after Slizik crosses the line, Ritz Crozen will not be too far behind in the 8. It was a crazy day for the 8. They were up near the front, they were down near the back, but a fifth place overall finish for them. GoProv will finish in sixth place, but will be demoted back to seventh. Bard Macha will finish seventh officially, but sixth after the penalty is applied. No, they won't. No, they won't. GoProv got enough gap. GoProv will finish sixth. Bard Macha will finish seventh, and Sizek will be eighth. And what can you say about SimSmeets? The 95 Porsche team was on it all day and did not give up. They kept their heads down. They weren't always the leaders in high silver, but they were there when it mattered. 95 Porsche wins it in high silver. Strapa does everything they possibly can in the 185 AMR V8 Vantage today to minimize the damage in the points, but the 95 will gain a little bit. Shadzaria in the 71, frustrating day for them. And of course, Theobald in the 271, Spirit of the Race award for them, as they end up finishing on the high silver podium, and also probably a Spirit of the Race award for the 837, who was several laps down, but stuck with it. Everybody behind them, of course, did not finish this race. Well, going into the final round in 1 week's time, Ryan Mawson, we have a championship points battle between both classes, and it's fairly even, mind you, as well. Only about 30 to 32 points the difference between first and second, and you can get 65 points for a win. It is going to be a decent size ask, but not impossible in the final round.
Yep, it's going to be another, as per typical RCI end of the season. It's going to be another epic battle between these four drivers, two championships to play for. And honestly, after watching that race, I couldn't tell you who is going to win. Both of those teams are, when you look at them, you think, yep, either of those can win it. It's going to be such an action-packed event.
Well, we are joined by one half of the winning team, Chris Melbourne, in the booth with us now. Chris, what an excellent first stint you had there. We're just actually rewatching it here around the outside here. Did you know that was going to work, or?
Um, at the start, I knew it was going to be such a benefit to pass the Porsche early. I knew the pace was fast. But I was hoping it was going to stick, but unfortunately, it didn't straight away. But we tried.
It was crazy racing. You had the 71 all over you. The 8 was up there. It was a high pressure situation, but eventually getting the pass done, getting it done, and you mentioned in chat that you felt it was necessary because you knew the 141 would be coming through the field.
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, they've had great pace all season and great consistency as well. So, yeah, it was definitely key to get out in front and start chucking in some hot laps at the start. And with him having probably one of his worst qualifying sessions he's had so far, that was also a positive for us to get out in front and run.
Well, you make the championship manageable at this point. You gained points this week. It was 40 coming in. It's less than that now. You go into the final round. What's the strategy? Is it just go like hell in the final race and hope something happens?
Yeah, that's all we can do, really. We had a bad Alton Park, which we DNF'd, so that cost us some. We had a crash out on Bathurst, which cost us a bit more from P1. So yeah, it's all down to Donington. I think the gap's too big, but if they keep it clean and consistent like they have done for the whole series, then it's definitely going to be a tough job on us,
I'm going to give you some motivation, Chris. Take this to your team. They finished seventh a couple of times this race. What's the difference between first and seventh? It's about 30 some points.
Yeah, that should be enough, right? So, what's that? Qualified P1, fastest lap and
That,
win. It's all.
yep, there you go.
It's all to do, right?
It is possible. Well, I'm going to turn you over to my partner, Ryan Mawson, who has a question for you, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, how did you find the Bentley on a full race fuel? I've raced it here a couple of times at Hungaroring, and I was found that it's just an absolute beast over the top of the hill. But some of the through sector one, it's actually a little bit of a handful, at least on the times I've driven it.
Yeah, so the car's got to be set up quite aggressive, more for the sort of sector two um, and the fast stuff. Otherwise, you just wind up with too much understeer. But the downside then is obviously is trying to get it out of the slow turns because she just wants to bite, all the time. So, but yeah, it's certainly a handful if you want to be running the pace, definitely.
And I'm gonna guess that when you lot were racing and you saw everyone behind you sort of battling and getting the 5 seconds, I'm sure that you were grinning like a Cheshire cat from ear to ear.
Yeah, yeah, I think you have to, right? You
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
I mean, hats off to the 141 car. They started P4 and they found themselves up into P2 relatively early, really. So great driving from them.
Well, it's been the two of you all season, Volante and Ballas, and I can think of no better way than to end it with a one last 1v1 at the end of the season. Chris, congratulations. Give our best, I should say, to your team and your teammate, as it was obviously a team effort here today. But Chris Melbourne in the car first, getting it done, getting the big lead. We were, if you watch that race back on repeat, Chris, we might have been memeing a little bit. We, 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 and the chat, some of your fans as well, were doing a bunch of superlatives, such as, equating you to superhero behind the wheel, which is weird. I didn't know you could put a cape on a race car, but today maybe so. 20 something seconds of lead. And that was all she wrote. The 70 got out front and took the win and gave themselves a shot in the final week to win the championship. Congratulations, guys.
Thanks, man.
Well, there you have it. Chris said he knew it was important to get out front. He knew it was important to kind of pace the field. And I love that question you asked. Like, what were you thinking whenever they're racing behind you? Kind of laughed and chuckled at that too. Said, "Yeah, you love to see it, and you would if you were in that position."
Yeah, absolutely. It's just sometimes when you've got even more breathing room at you, it just takes that pressure off. You think, yeah, especially like you said, that team, they haven't, it hasn't been a perfect season. They haven't been the front runners every single time. They've had ups, they've had downs. It's just nice sometimes, when it happens to other people, you think, today is okay.
Well, there's good days on the racetrack and there's bad days. Some of the teams that retired today having not so great day, but for all the teams, the two teams, the 95 and of course the Volante team up front in the lead car, I gotta say, they needed a good day, the 70 and the 95. They both got a good day. And if you are the championship leaders, like the 141 and the 185 in their classes, respectively, you minimize that damage. So good job to you as well. But what it does create is a winner take all final race that is absolutely on the cards. Any finish outside the top seven in either class from the championship leader could put their championship at risk, and it's a possibility. We've seen sometimes you just show up to the racetrack and you don't have what you need. Well, folks, we thank you for joining us for this week's race. It was absolutely spectacular, as it always is at Hungaroring for some reason. We will be back with you for the finale in 1 week's time. The championship ends with round 8. We will crown 2 champions in pro and high silver. We hope that you'll join us. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for more GT racing content. And of course, a big thank you to all of you in chat for keeping the chat lively and all of your comments. We do appreciate that. Thank you for spending a little bit of your Friday evening with us. And of course, a big thank you to our partners, Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver 61, Fanatec, and Sim Racing GP. You can find all the links for all of those excellent folks in the description. And of course, you can also find a 25% off code for driver coaching at driver61.com in there as well. Join the Discord, get involved. Of course, GT4 Season 5 action is in sign up phase. Doesn't matter if you're a pro or a rookie just beginning. We have a split for you. And come on, GT4s are awesome to drive. 80-minute races in the new GT4 season, and it's going to be spectacular as well. Next race here on RCI TV is the Monday Super Lambo Cup, as I believe they're either on their penultimate or the final championship round of that. And of course, we'll be back with you here on Friday for the finale of the Friday Endurance Championship. On behalf of the entire broadcast team and the stewards, I've been Jesse Lee, joined by Ryan Mawson and Stewie in the box. We thank you for watching, and we hope you have a great weekend. Have a good night.
And we'll see you at Donington.